The Kalahari Transportier Park is a large wildlife preserve and conservation area in southern Africa. Kalahari means place of thirst. The total area is 38,000 square kilometers. Approximately 3/4 of the park lie in Botswana and 1/4 in South Africa. South Africa embraced the concept of transportiers linking ecological reserves across national borders. On the 12th of May 2000, President Festus Mogae of Botswana and Thabo Mbeki of South Africa formally launched South Africa's first peace park. It has 200 species of birds, including vultures, mammalians such as black Kalahari lions, and large herds of herbivores, namely elands, springboks, blue wildebeest, and more.
Judging from the view from my room, it was windy and slightly overcast.
Hello and welcome back. Now, I'm sure you couldn't hear us in the first couple of minutes when we started the program. We apologize, some technical issues there. But it's Wednesday today, 26th of April 2017, Jumbo Africa. And a very warm welcome to the first hour of the Newsroom. I'm Elvis Preslin.
And from the sports desk, I'm Marumo Kekana.
Now, we will be with you until 12 o'clock. We're conducting a poll today on the Economic Commission for Africa that says that illicit financial outflows from the continent could be more than 50 billion rand a year. So we're asking you this question, Marumo, here on the screen for you on the poll. Does Africa pay enough attention to the loss of billions of dollars leaving the African continent? What have we got?
Thus far, we have, going back to the poll, thus far we have 111 votes, 11% saying yes, 89% saying no.
Yeah, so the African continent does not pay enough attention. Mgadi says this is well documented. Former President Thabo Mbeki made presentations to this to the United Nations and the AU, etc. Yes, he made a big stink about this. It's continuing. They're looking for the money, Marumo.
It's a problem indeed. And this one coming from Munaiwa Kenneth, saying that yes, but we are afraid to be sanctioned by the continent that kill people who doesn't want trade.
Well, says Kenneth there. This one from Doomy Scott says no. Because we are begging the investors, unlike the Middle East countries. In the long run, we lose. They must invest on our terms, not on their terms, says Doomy, because that's the point. You know, they're giving us assistance in terms of financial aid, but then they take 3 times of that financial aid back.
But then you really don't have a say on the whole thing if you don't have money. This one coming from Musi, saying that yes, Africa does, but the systems used to plunder are a bit too complex. Whereas some Africans are complicit in the siphoning.
In the siphoning of that. Too bad, says that one. So you can keep them coming. Let us know what's on your mind. I would like to get your thoughts on that. You remember Thabo Mbeki made a real stink about this one. It's a continuing situation where billions are being lost out of the African continent that can beneficiate you, me, and all our people on the continent. But we're also focusing on a task team that was appointed to investigate the cause of violence during service delivery protests in the Northwest. So we're asking them that question, Marumo. You know, Lichtenberg is a light and there's a lot of looting going on. We're asking the question, why do communities use thuggery to bring their point across? That's the question. You can let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on our Facebook page. But first, let's take a look at your news headlines. South African Airways has conceded that it's operating on a shoestring budget. The SACP calls on South Africans to join the anti-Zuma marches in their numbers until the ANC recalls the president. And a strong police presence remains as a task team is appointed to investigate the cause of violence during protests in the northwest. Those are all your headlines, but before we get there to the news, let's find out from Marumo Kakana what's happening on the sports front. Lots of goals last night.
Lots of goals last night, locally and even internationally. Of course, greetings from the sports desk. What you can look forward to, the citizens, Cape Town City, have their messy moment as they scored a last-minute goal to record a 3-2 win over the title rivals, Kaizer Chiefs. Antonio Conte's boys are 7 points clear of the top of the EPL as they record a 4-2 win over Southampton. South Africa's top-ranked tennis player, Kevin Anderson, is through to the third round of the Barcelona Open after beating hometown favorite David Ferrer. That's what you can look forward to from the sports desk. But now we take you to the main desk where Elvis is standing by with news making headlines across the world.
Thank you, Marumo. We start off here at home. SAA, South African Airways, has conceded that it's operating on a shoestring budget. Now this comes as the South African Cabin Crew Association served the airline with a notice of a strike demanding a 2,200 Rand meal allowance for international flights. The industrial action could result in widespread disruption of international as well as domestic flights. The airline says it's doing everything in its power to finalize outstanding matters with the association. Meanwhile, the South African Communist Party has called on South Africans to join the anti-Zuma marchers in their numbers until the ANC recalls the President Jacob Zuma. South African Communist Party's second Deputy Secretary, Solly Mapaila, made the call while delivering a Chris Hani Memorial Lecture in East London.
The SACP says it will lead marches calling for the removal of President Jacob Zuma from office. Mapaila says if the ANC does not catch a wake-up call and recall President Jacob Zuma, the party will lose much more in 2019 than the 3 metros it lost during the local government elections. But Mapaila says they won't vote with the opposition in parliament in the vote of no confidence motion against President Zuma. He says they will continue to put pressure on the ANC in its caucuses to have the president recalled.
We support the content of those marches about the removal of the president to step down. But we don't support any call. We don't participate in an anti-ANC program. We are part of the ANC ourselves, but we don't want this president to continue in this form where he's giving away national independence as a South Africa. And for that reason, and for the reason of many of the martyrs of our revolution, we feel that call to defend our national sovereignty from the Guptas and other parasites that have embedded themselves in the state and state-owned enterprises.
Mapaila says the SACP has exhausted all internal structures to get the ANC to act.
Instead of comrades saying, are they raising real issues that should be debated inside the movement? They are being attacked. The party cannot be part of those who attack our comrades who raise critical issues facing our revolution.
The SACP is also in favor of a commission of inquiry to be set up to probe the state capture claims. Busisiwe Jemsana, SABC News, East London.
The African National Congress Youth League in the Northern Cape has described the former Transport Minister, Dipuo Peters, as well as the former Energy Minister, Tina Joemat-Pettersson, as dedicated cadres who did sterling jobs at the national government. The two were welcomed home by the Youth League during a rally held in Kimberley. They were sacked by the President Jacob Zuma during his recent midnight cabinet reshuffle.
Some of the ANC leaders in the province, including Premier Sylvia Lucas, were in attendance. This amidst the tension that is threatening to divide the party due to the battle for leadership positions. They sang praises of how the former ministers worked hard to ensure the province continued to be given top-notch government services. The party also pleaded with them not to abandon the province, but to continue serving the party at home, a call they humbly accepted.
I'm happy that I'm back home And I will be working with the structures in the province, the structures of the ANC, the structures of the Women's League, as well as the Youth League. And I'm also looking forward to work with the structures of the ANC Veterans League, because it is a structure that really needs to be supported to be able to provide the necessary support and guidance to the broader structures of the ANC. But I'm also here to do my bit as a social worker by profession.
A call was also made to the Extended Working Committee to establish a platform for both Peters and Jumat Peterson to continue interacting at national level to ensure that they serve the province effectively. Pula Mudupe, SABC News, Kimberley.
A task team has been appointed to investigate the cause of violence during service delivery protests in the northwest. A strong police presence is expected to remain in Itsoseng, in Lichtenburg and Kolini, where residents are demanding basic services such as water and housing from the cash-strapped Ditsobotla local municipality. Now, yesterday, police battled with residents of Tlabolohang, the township next to the R503, which links Mahikeng to Gauteng. Schools in the affected townships have been closed.
School kids roam the streets. Businesses have been looted and police property damaged. The community of Bladeville near Lichtenburg has taken to the streets demanding proper and effective service delivery.
We want a high school in Bladeville. We want a satellite police station, 24-hour clinic. The needs of Bladeville must be seen to.
Businesses are on the receiving end. This shop owner says she has lost more than 250,000 rand in stock since Friday.
We are very, very devastated. We've lost a lot in terms of business, in terms of stock.
The ANC in the province has condemned this violence, saying some criminals have hijacked this protest to serve their own agendas.
What we do not appreciate and like, and we want to condemn it, is the violent manner in which these demonstrations for service delivery are done, because it can be possible that it's used to rob shopkeepers, it's used to burn private properties.
We condemn whatever criminality that is taking place, because these things, some of them are no longer related to service delivery.
The community has vowed to continue protesting until government meets them. Olebogeng Khosilenswe, SABC News, Lichtenburg.
Staying with the story, the Freedom Front Plus, meanwhile, has dismissed as a smokescreen the race-related reasons being given for the unrest in Kolini. Some of the protesters say this is a result of the death of a 12-year-old boy who fell from a vehicle, allegedly after being accused by a farmer of stealing sunflowers. For the latest now, we go live to our SABC reporter, Sentliing Lehihi, who is in Kolini. A very good morning to you, Sentliing. How is Kolini this morning after yesterday's protests and the burning of tires in the small rural town there?
Morning to you, Elvis. Certainly a chilly morning here in Kolini. The situation has calmed a bit, but still tense. We see some of our shop operators and businessmen here trying to pick up the pieces after having lost what they lost in the violent protest. We see a large contingency of police right through the town and the township to ensure that the situation continues to stabilize. If you actually notice behind me, some of the police who've been keeping a watchful eye in this community are making their way right past us now. This is significant, as you know, that the police have actually been targeted as not acting enough in arresting those who are allegedly linked to the death of the 12-year-old boy. It is alleged that, yes, the boy was found allegedly to be stealing sunflower in a local farm, found by the farm owners, assaulted, and then fell off the van. It is not certain if indeed the boy's family has been found and his body been identified. But what we can ascertain at this point, police have confirmed to us that the two men who are linked to the child's murder have been apprehended and are certainly set to appear in court on Friday.
Issue here, because the Freedom Front Plus has dismissed the notion that the protest is race-related.
Absolutely, yes. The Freedom Front Plus has actually dumbed down all of those allegations. But residents, particularly protesting residents, are adamant that this here crime was committed and perpetrated against a black child, and the people were not apprehended, particularly because they were white. We do not understand why do they believe this to be but the reason for causing such disruptions. However, this is the situation as it is, and the community reacted in the manner they reacted based on what they termed to have been a racially motivated incident.
Now, there's a number of towns on fire in the northwest. Let's move to Lichtenburg. What has sparked the protest there in Blytheville?
The situation in Blytheville has also calmed a bit. The residents there are demanding better services, particularly housing. It is an informal settlement of note that has existed for some time. The residents have went on a violent rampage, destroying many property there. A police nyala was actually set alight, and a garage, in fact, was vandalized. There seems to be quite a large contingency of police there attempting to restore peace there. It is still to be seen how long this peace will last, as we understand that the violent protests in Blytheville are, in fact, on and off. They seem to settle but re-emerge after some time.
And the other areas, such as Itsoseng, what is the situation there, and what can you tell us about that? What does the community say about the service delivery protest?
Indeed, Elvis, you get the feeling that the Ditsobotla municipality is in disarray, because just a stone's throw away from Lichtenburg, about 15 kilometers away in Itsoseng, we have seen violent protests there where communities are protesting, demanding water. They say they have went for 9 years without water. They're saying they are being forced to buy water at 5 rand a litre from local merchants, which is not in line with their constitutional rights. They have went on a rampage, destroying the little shops that they have in that area. While police are there restoring peace, it remains to be seen how long that peace, in fact, will last. It is noteworthy that the mayor of the Ditsobotla local municipality has spoken against the disruption and vandalism of property, and that while people are free to voice their concerns and express themselves through protests, these should be done within the rights that everyone has without infringing on other property rights. And to note that the provincial government has indeed also, put together a provincial committee to go into all these areas and ascertain how all of these things could have happened and an entire municipality go up in flames in this manner.
Sentlehing, thank you so much for that report. She'll keep us updated as to what is happening there. Sentlehing Lehihi, she's in Kolini. You have to watch these areas. And that's why we're asking you this question this morning. That question is related to the protests that we've seen in Northwest, in Kolini, Lichtenburg, and so forth. Why do communities use thuggery to bring their point across? As you can see, the looting of buildings and, of course, stores in the areas there. That's a bottle store, as far as I can tell, being looted. So people were having a party at night. Well, that's the question. Let's take a look at what you have to say. On the Twitter handle, this one coming from Andrew. He says, is because that the government is too slow or they don't listen at all. So going to the streets and burning tires is the only solution available, says Andrew. Violence begets violence, Andrew, they say. Collins Ntsele says, it is the only language that the ANC administration seems to take seriously. Engaging in dialogue is a waste of time. This one from Lachasa Batlamolo says, land grabs, hashtag, ruling party ignored us long time ago. They should listen to us now. It is our time. These are some of the comments coming through. You can keep them coming and let us know what's on your mind. Let's now take a look at what's trending on the Twitter handle. So, because we start with some of the topics that are still trending from yesterday. We started with the police minister, Kile Mbalula, who was trending due to the press conference that was held yesterday, at which he urged public to download Tibor Touch's app to fight crime. He also reiterated his policy to shoot to kill, as criminals would not hesitate to shoot at police officers. He also spoke about the overweight police officers, saying that this is something he plans to work on. He also indicated that he is the new sheriff in town. What do you make of that? You can also tweet us in relation to the new minister. Then violent service delivery protests broke out yesterday in Colini. We just carried that story for you in the northwest. You can see some of the residents there. They are demanding water and housing. However, they set houses alight, looting shops, and those in neighboring Lichtenburg attacked vehicles. Booty on the Twitter handle says, if you can't understand why a community will burn the school in protest, you have not internalized these struggles. Hashtag Colini protests there. Well, that's also true. If you don't live in the area, how can you tell what is the problems at hand? Well, we'll get our reporter to give us an update a little bit later. Moving further afield now, in England today marks 10 years since the 3-year-old Madeleine McCann went missing from her family's hotel room in Portugal. Now, this famous case has still not been resolved, and all suspects were ruled out. Hashtag Madeleine. And then, United Airlines are in hot water again following the death of the world's largest rabbit died in their cargo hold in transit from London to Chicago. There you see it there, United Airlines with that rabbit there. Then on to the US, just when we thought that the Pope couldn't get more modern, hashtag Pope Francis hosted a surprise TED talk, or TED Talk, a discussion at which he encouraged leaders of the world to be and act more humbly. Hashtag Pope Francis. And then, hashtag Trump wall was not just all talk. However, his plans have been postponed. California says they will blacklist any Trump wall bidders. Now, if you want to get into construction, go to America, build a wall, they say. Let's take a look at the picture of the day that comes from Blow Bill Blond, Elise Beekers, and it's captioned, now that's the protest that you've seen in Coligny and Lichtenburg and so forth, and she says, all I can say is why, and why. You are destroying everything and don't come back and ask for help. Hashtag Lichtenburg. That police van there, there was also another one torched. If you look at some of the other pictures coming through from these areas. And the question is why? Why do you destroy and get down to thuggery to get your point across? On the comment of the day, that comes from Sidia Akalwaya, who says, I fail to understand why protesters have to resort to thuggery to get their message across. Hashtag Colini as well as Lichtenburg. Well, that's the question we're all supposed to. You let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. Let's now take a look at what's happening in the courts today, and we start off in Cape Town, where the case of the 22-year-old Henry van Breda is expected back in court. Now, he's accused of killing his parents and older brother at their Stellenbosch home in 2015. He has pleaded not guilty to all the charges against him. Then in Johannesburg, a 25-year-old suspect accused of raping a 9-year-old child is expected to appear at the Palm Ridge Magistrates Court. Initially, the suspect was arrested but released after police failed to secure a statement from a witness. A blunder which had the case struck off the roll. He was rearrested. Now we'll keep you updated on all these cases as they develop. But we'll take a break. But when we do come back, we start off with our theme today, looking at illicit outflows out of the African continent. Stay tuned. You don't want to miss it.
A presumed U.S. drone strike in the south of the country has killed 3 al-Qaeda suspects.
Death toll in Yemen's 18-month-old civil war now stands at about 10,000.
People get killed or die and are actually buried before they're recorded, and we don't have a way of recording that, but we know the numbers are much higher.
Water restrictions are to be imposed on villages in and around the Nkomazi municipality.
Pumps can't pump the water because there's no water in a river, and if the water is coming back, then it's full of mud.
Those who can pray and those who can do any miracle to make sure that we've got enough rain, give it a try.
Now, as the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, held their spring meetings in Washington, Africans Rising for Justice, Peace and Dignity, a Pan-African emerging movement, is condemning the World Bank's as well as the IMF's lack of action on and their complicity in illicit financial flows from Africa, and called on them as well as African governments and regional bodies to act to stop the bleeding of African wealth now. There's also a hashtag, Stop Bleeding the Wealth of Africans. Billions of dollars due to African nations are illicitly leaving the continent. The question is, are you aware of it? Now, according to the Economic Commission for Africa, illicit financial flows from the continent could be more than $50 billion a year. That amounts to approximately double and sometimes even triple the official development assistance that the continent receives. For more on the story, in our studios we are joined by Jess Latchman, a representative of Africans Rising for Justice, Peace and Dignity. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Morning, thank you.
First and foremost, tell me about your organization and what is the aim of the organization?
Africans Rising is a new movement to build Pan-African unity across the continent, premised on justice, dignity and peace. Mm-hmm. So on the justice terms, illicit financial flows is key to that. We lose between 50 and 100 billion US dollars a year through tax evasion and various forms of corruption, misinvoicing, and various tax breaks that governments give to large corporations. So that's part of the justice. The peace is an end to the ongoing violence that Africans experience on a daily basis throughout the continent. From South Africa, people were killed in protests, or, through the DRC, which remains a war zone, even now South Sudan, where violence has erupted again. And the dignity part is about the fact that for too long now, Africans throughout the continent have been focused on mere survival. And that's not a human existence. We should be focused on becoming a healthy, prosperous and peaceful continent, not just on the basics of trying to survive on a daily basis.
The richest continent in relation to resources, but the poorest when it comes to finances. Now, you are blaming the IMF and the World Bank for inaction. Why is that?
Well, global tax deals that are structured in-country or across regions, etc., are stuff, these are arrangements which they exist, the financial oversight to attend to them. And in that process, the World Bank as such, being the grandfather, if you like, of the Bretton Woods institutions, which were set up to create a fairer world order after World War II, are ignoring this. They have no contribution. They're not making anything positive towards the process of going, well, this is actually unfair because you are losing all of this money through which should have been paid in taxes. And on the other side, we pretend to be giving you aid. So in the end, the entire African continent could do well without aid if the companies which operated here merely paid their taxes.
Is there a sense that they are complicit, the World Bank and IMF, in the practices of illicit outflows out of Africa?
This is a tricky one to prove directly, but there is an example. For example, the African Renewable Energy Initiative was set up by African countries to be able to increase the uptake in renewable energy in South Africa. It's the AREI, not just South Africa, the African continent. And it was structured well. And the rules about how the renewable energy projects are established, the community consultations, the environmental impacts, beautifully done. What do the multilateral institutions do, the European Union Party, etc.? They allow projects which have not gone through that process to be counted as projects towards renewable energy in Africa. And these kinds of projects are the ones which don't allow the local communities to benefit from them.
So beneficiation is key, and that's what's lost here.
Totally, in many instances.
Are you also suggesting then that the aid being given to Africa is then being offset by these illegal outflows out of the country, or of the continent rather?
Yeah, the aid is merely a farce. That's the simplest way to put it. There is no other way to describe it. If we had the companies, the multinational corporations, the local companies which work throughout the continent extracting resources, producing goods, selling sugar, our oil, diamonds, etc., if they merely paid the tax that was due and was legitimately due to the host countries where they operated, there would be no need for aid.
Now, you did indicate that it's hard to prove that the World Bank and IMF is involved in illicit outflows, but who is actually the main drivers then of these illicit outflows? Is it only international companies investing, or is it aid companies investing in Africa?
I think the drivers of illicit financial flows on the African continent are multiple. They are partly political, because governments enter into trade agreements with other countries, and in doing that they tend to give up the right to claim taxation on the basis that there is investment. However, if you look at the Niger Delta, one of the largest oil producing regions on the continent, the companies which operate there claim they've invested 8.22 billion naira in those communities. Now, those communities comprise of 60,000 people. But if you had been there, you would see there is not a school, there is not a clinic, there is not a hospital. If you take that money and divide it by the 60,000 people who live there, they would have schools, they would have houses, plus they would have almost 20,000 naira a month income from the oil. So it's not adding up. The numbers don't add up. You know, this is the Thabo Mbeki panel that investigated this made it very clear that the numbers are not adding up in terms of what is happening here.
Now, we know now that money is leaving the continent, but where does this money go and who benefits?
Well, it's not us, that's for sure. So, the money, you know, the money trail needs to be followed to its end, but right now it would appear that many multinational corporations, as well as complicit corrupt politicians, the nuclear deal in South Africa is an excellent example of corruption and illicit financial flows. So South Africa has created a nuclear deal with the Russians, of which no South African knows anything about. You know, the details are only starting to come to light because of court processes. But the reality is that the money that will be generated from this, where will it go? It's going to go back to Russia. So there's complicity between the politicians involved. Sometimes it's between governments, but generally governments are led by politicians. So
European countries has been identified as some of the beneficiaries here in this illicit outflows of Africa. Are they being targeted? And I know that the Thabo Mbeki Foundation started with, or the Thabo Mbeki a probe into this. They started looking at this money to recoup it. Is there any possibility of success?
I think there is good possibility of success. If we are committed to doing this. It's the same with the fight against apartheid, for example. While it may have seemed like it was an impossible thing to have achieved, the fact that there was a degree of commitment amongst people to end a practice that was inhumane. Illicit financial flows, like the illegal settlements in the West Bank, these are inhumane things. They do not serve any purpose to humanity other than to oppress other human beings.
Now, Mr. Lachman, on the 25th of May, we understand that Africans Rising will officially launch the African Liberation Day, hashtag 25th May 2017, with events throughout the continent. What are you planning and what's in store?
There are many things in store that are happening locally in South Africa, in Yeoville, just down the street from here. The Africa Diaspora Forum is hosting a soccer tournament, for example, that brings together players from various continents. 44 different countries will be represented in that tournament. So it's a range of activities. In Gorée Island, which is off the coast of Senegal, there will be a commemoration of the beginning of the slave trade, which has a huge impact on the African continent. That was the illicit financial flows of the past, where, you know, in the past, the Americans and various others actually stole human beings. Now they're stealing money. So it's the Gorée Island celebration is to acknowledge that the history of stealing human beings to turn them into slaves is where part of the history of the continent comes from, and we need to acknowledge that. There are events in virtually every part of the continent. Our website's the best place to get there, or on Twitter. Just follow @Africans Rising, #Africans Rising. We're strong on Twitter. Yeah, you keep up to date there.
Mr. Latchman, I think this is one of the conversations, the starting point, where we need to have a lot more time to discuss the issues. But thank you so much for coming in and joining us.
Great. Thank you.
That was Representative for Africans Rising, Jess Latchman, here in studio. We're going to continue this discussion in a short while, so you don't want to miss it. We're talking about illicit outflows out of the continent. But we're asking you a very good question today. People are going on protest marches, and then they loot. There you see the picture. And we're asking you, why do communities use thuggery to bring their point across? Let's take a look at what you have to say on social media. This one from Itumelo says, it's language from the South Africans to government, says Tumelo. Rizon says, government don't listen if people protest peacefully. Just look at Vuwani now. If the matter was handled properly, Vuwani was going to be a good place to visit. Good point. Tisetso says, we should not be surprised of such conduct. That's the result of ignorant government that makes empty promises during elections. That's how he feels about it. Lachasa says, we have been engaging with the ruling party, but we couldn't notice that they don't understand our language. They understand protest, says Lachasa. Berry Martin says, our useful leaders promise must lie to our communities because they are using people for their own benefit. That's also useful leaders are lying to their communities. These are some of your comments. Please keep them coming on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on the Facebook page. And by the way, talking about Facebook, let's take a look at our Facebook page today. And we start off with the initiation-related deaths that continue to rise because there's no law governing the practice. That's the view of the CRL Commission. You can see it there on your page. Then the Commonwealth Secretary-General, Patricia Scotland, has visited Lesotho's King Letsia III in order to prepare for the Commonwealth involvement ahead of the Mountain Kingdom's June the 3rd election. And then finally, in North Korea, they conducted the live fire exercise on Tuesday to mark the foundation of its military as a U.S. submarine docked in South Korea. There's tension in that area. We'll keep you updated of these and more on our Facebook page as well as on SABC News website. You have to stay tuned. Let's now take a look at the front pages from around the globe of all the newspapers, and we're starting off in New York, where the Wall Street Journal reports that the President, Donald Trump, today is planning to unveil a proposal to cut corporate taxes on U.S. companies' foreign profits and to slash the top tax rate on so-called pass-through businesses, including many owned and operated companies, to about 15% from 39%, said the White House official familiar with the planning. Now that is absolutely incredible. They did say he's pro-business. That is Trump. Moving to Europe, the Times says that government borrowing has dropped to its lowest level since the eve of the 2008 financial crisis. Official figures revealed yesterday. Now the annual shortfall in the public finances stands at £52 billion, down by £20 billion in the past year, according to the Office of the National Statistics. Finally, in China, the South China Morning Post reports that China's first domestically built aircraft carrier, formerly named the Shandong, was launched on Wednesday, the latest display of Beijing's growing naval power. Those are all the headlines from newspapers around the globe. We'll take a short break, and after this, we continue our discussion of financial outflows out of Africa. Are you aware of? Let us know.
Phones, cloud systems and robots have taken over a lot of what used to be done manually.
Our accounting system is actually based on the cloud.
Google nowadays can tell you where you parked your car.
And Africa's entrepreneurs are using technology to create.
With Pocket Masipala, you can basically do all the services that you would do at the municipality physically by going there, but you can now do them on a mobile app.
Join Ms. Phumelele Zondi on Sundays at 9 p.m. on SABC News.
Now, Western countries are using aid to Africa as a smokescreen to hide the sustained looting of the continent as it loses more than $50 billion per year. The report says that while Western countries send about $30 billion in development aid to Africa every year, more than 6 times that amount leaves the continent, they say. Well, mainly to the same countries that are providing that aid. For more on how Africa is being looted and exploited, we are now joined in studio by the Chief Economist Investment Solutions, Lasiwe Mutata. Mr. Mutata, very good morning to you and welcome.
Hi.
Now, when we hear the numbers, 50 billion and more, it makes for concerning read. What is your take on this?
It's clearly very problematic, especially when you find that African countries are beholden to debt, which is normal debt that is borrowed, and will have to augment that with aid. It's problematic. I think we need to create systems that actually can get transparency in terms of how flows of capital are happening in the continent. The fact that we're still resource-based and there is no industry or there is no beneficiated manufacturing that happens in the country, I think it exacerbates this problem. It's completely wrong and it needs to change.
Do you think that that is perhaps the reason why the president and the ruling party is calling for black industrialists here in our country to start that process in order to industrialize South Africa and as a start to move that out to Africa where Africans can benefit?
I think it's also a function of just technology and how you can monitor flows. Particularly from the central bank and how this current account financial flows are happening and regulation. There is that aspect that the more regulated you have and stronger institutions that you have a better look in terms of what happens on flows. I would argue in SA is slightly different. There are in the current account deficit numbers, you find unclassified flows, which cannot be seen in detail of what's going on. SARS is also quite involved in making sure that there is no data or flows of goods and services and money that is not in the sight of regulators. So from an SA perspective, I'd argue it's a very different outcome, which suggests that we will need other African countries to have strong central banks, to give revenue services that are also on top of things and use technology a lot more intensely. But needless to say, our challenges are more different, and we do need to be focusing inwards and making sure that we have industry, we have manufacturing that is contributing more strongly to GDP, and also that we make our own things here without having to import everything.
Those unclassified funds or flows that you're talking about, why can it not be detected? Why is it so difficult to do that?
Sometimes it's very difficult to know the origin of these funds. Regulation, remember, can only go to a certain level. You need a willing citizenry or corporate citizenry that can participate with filling in the details accurately and declaring honestly where things have come from and where they're going. So there's a lot of effort that's been put to that, but it's a two-way stream. Regulation can get to some point. Technology can help to get to the detail of what's going on, but they are unclassified. And it is accepted in economics that you can have all the details of what's going on, and there's a huge amount, which can prove to be a huge amount, on unclassified transactions.
You're also suggesting that we need stronger central banks on the African continent. Does that then suggest that we work in silos and that there's not almost like a template where everybody works on the same level?
I do think that there has been a silo developmental outcome that is happening in Africa. I think about it, African economies are constructed to have more than 90% of its raw materials exported outside the continent, not within the continent. And in it, it expresses the idiosyncratic, specific disposition of every one of these countries, and we need to have a lot more inward-looking focus. That's why the regional economic constructs are more important. You know, SADC, the western side, they have their own, in the east they have their own. All those are quite important to make sure that we have a lot more integrated African development strategy. In it, fiscal policy and in other words, national treasuries, and also central banks need to actually have their own independent way, but also having a integrated approach in terms of how we develop as a continent.
Is economic growth being constrained by these illicit outflows out of the continent?
Most definitely. Because if a treasury could have received taxes, they would have been able to increase infrastructure, they would have been able to bolster education, which could create greater productivity, which will create sustained high GDP growth. Right now, Africa, and here's the dismay, that we still remain very beholden to a commodity cycle. You see it much more in the West, where oil prices, energy, if it goes down as we find ourselves now, there's just economic mayhem that ensues. Can you believe Nigeria is only going to be growing at 0.8% this year? According to the IMF data that came out last week, only 0.8. An economy that has been punching more than 5% consistently in the last 7-8 years just shows how, and then it went into recession and now only coming up at 0.8% GDP growth. Just shows that we have become so beholden to commodities. We need to diversify, and we need to make sure that we've got technology. There's a lot of fintech, financial technology that is happening in the world that we need to apply to make sure that we don't have money just leaving without being taxed, without having the transparency of it where it's going.
Aid seems to be a problematic area where these aid companies or aid organizations pour in aid into Africa. Countries do that the same thing, and then they expect something in return. Does that also is that being offset rather by the illicit outflows?
Aid is helpful, but it's a symptom that there's a problem. The fact that I need to go to the IMF to get some bailout, or I have to go to the World Bank to get aid, or even from those development banks out of Europe, just shows that the incumbent countries are having a problematic situation. We've got to get to the root of the issue. If we become more independent, pay off some of this debt, negotiate some of it so that, you know, there is some concession that happens from both sides, but we have to support institutions, have vibrant democracies, have leadership that actually makes sure that we put policies that are strong so we can be independent. Think about development in the world. Asia has come of age. They're standing on their own feet. Latin America, right? To some degree, there are countries that have issues. There's still some problems, but largely, relative to where we sit, have done better. We need to actually find our own feet and make sure that development is dictated upon from us. We choose our paths, not because we had an IMF bailout package that says do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but we find that we have ourselves created policies that can sustain higher growth, and it's encouraging to see what will happen at the World Economic Forum conversation that's happening next week about Africa, and it's all around inclusive growth.
Mr. Motata, I thank you so much for your insight, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. As usual, that was the Chief Economist at Investment Solutions, Lesibo Motata, giving us his take on illicit outflows out of the continent. We'll have some more of that discussion when he comes back sometime next week or the week thereafter. But right now, it's time to find out how hot is it on the continent as well as here on our very doorstep with Tsetsi Monare. They'll give you your weather forecast. It's not so hot as illicit outflows, is it, Tsetsi?
Hey there, welcome from the weather desk. It is quite a chilly one here in Gauteng and most parts of South Africa. We are expecting cloudy conditions and rainy weather for the Western Cape province. There's up to 60% chance of rainfall along those parts. Otherwise, just cloud cover for much of the southern regions, especially towards Zambia, Angola, and even for Namibia. And again, a bit of rainfall towards the DRC, some parts of Tanzania, Kenya, and for all those that are going to be in Madagascar, do expect a bit of showers just along the interior as well as over the eastern coastline. For tomorrow, we're seeing lesser chance of rainfall for South Africa. Only 30% chance of rainfall is expected. Again, on a similar area, southwestern parts. The rest are going to be quite clear. Maybe a little bit of clouds to look out for on your holiday, but then do expect some partly cloudy skies and rainy weather for Madagascar, the DRC, Rwanda, and definitely for all those that are going to be in Burundi. Temperatures this afternoon, quite a chilly one. Cape Town at a maximum of only 22 degrees. The R is at 24, and Pretoria also nice and cool, reaching only 23. But it's going to be lovely and a fine day for most parts of Mpumalanga and the Limpopo province. The Eastern Cape, quite warm, 27 for Port Elizabeth. And again, you'll also be seeing some upper 20s right across the northern part of Mozambique. Nampula 28, 26 for Beira, and even hot for Maputo at a maximum of 31. Walvis Bay is at 24, 23 for Windhoek. Mahon reaches a maximum of 25 degrees. And you can just see the central interior of Botswana is expected to be fairly warm. 23 to about 25 is what you should expect. And do remember, here in the southern hemisphere, we are already going through a bit of autumn, or actually the last part of autumn, now starting into winter. 31 for Port Louis and Victoria, places that almost hardly never experience winter. Temperatures are usually quite the same along those parts, but you will see dwindling temperatures towards Lusaka, Lilongwe, and the rest of the Lake Malawi regions. Luanda is at a maximum of 30, Kinshasa 33, and a warm day is expected to Libreville at 29, becoming very hot for Juba at a maximum of 34 degrees, and again, widespread showers. Now moving further along the coast and stretching further towards the interior of those coastal countries, especially for all those that are going to be in Ghana, and Nigeria, and possibly even towards Cote d'Ivoire. You can see lots of rainfall is expected there. And traveling again towards the central parts. Along the east, there's a bit of a visiting rainfall, yeah? I say visiting because it hardly rains along Ethiopia and Eritrea, but there's lots and lots of rainfall expected for the day, and that will continue even into the early start of tomorrow morning. Tunisia would see a 30% chance of rainfall, also light spread or light chance of rainfall expected towards Libya, some parts of Morocco. The rest are going to be quite clear and dry. Nothing much happening along the Middle East. Mecca reaches a maximum of 38, 32 for Tripoli, Agadez at 42, and West Africa quite hot as usual. Temperatures increasing there to maximums of about 43 for Niamey. Yaoundé at 31, and that's where I'll leave it for the weather. Stay tuned, there's more to come.
A presumed U.S. drone strike in the south of the country has killed 3 al-Qaeda suspects.
Death toll in Yemen's 18-month-old civil war now stands at about 10,000.
People get killed or die and are actually buried before they're recorded. And we don't have a way of recording that, but we know the numbers are much higher.
Water restrictions are to be imposed on villages in and around the Nkomazi municipality.
Pumps can't pump the water because there's no water in a river. And if the water is coming back, and it's full of mud.
Those who can pray and those who can do any miracle to make sure that we've got enough rain, give it a try.
South Africa's cardiovascular disease burden is growing and responsible for almost 1 in 6 deaths. About 130 people in South Africa experience a heart attack. Some survive, while others do not. Shocking statistics released by Heart and Stroke Foundation South Africa shows that every hour, 5 people suffer from heart attacks. Symptoms of a heart disease differ from one person to the next. The symptoms may be slight or severe. The following are common symptoms of a heart disease that people should never ignore.
The presence of chest pain, but it may not be a typical type of chest pain, which usually is described as a crushing sensation on the middle of the chest. Some people describe it as a rubber band that goes across the chest. A lot of people experience other symptoms such as nausea or sweating, as well as palpitations, which is an awareness of the heart beating rapidly or hard in the chest. As well as this pain may radiate down the left side of the face or the left arm, but it may also manifest as simple or very subtle symptoms such as just shortness of breath or effort intolerance or fatigue.
Once thought to be a disease associated with the elderly, heart disease also affects young people as well.
I think the most important thing is that people realize that heart failure or heart disease is not an old person's disease. It's completely non-racist. It affects all members of our society, especially in our society where people are now living more, I would say, modernized or westernized lifestyles, especially if one is into a sort of fast-moving kind of city or urban lifestyle where a lot of fast foods are being consumed, a lot of processed foods are being consumed, where people use lots of these bottled sauces or spices that come out of a packet or a bottle. It's not made by hand or bought directly from the farms. Patients that are taking a lot of fast foods on a daily basis, who have a lot of sugar-rich beverages, such as your sugar-sweetened beverages, which are, we all know the normal brands. Those are the kind of individuals that need to be very aware that these things that, although they taste good and look good, affect people years later.
Some causes of heart disease cannot be prevented, such as family history of heart disease. However, it is important to lower your chances of developing a heart disease by decreasing the risk factors that you can control.
Healthy lifestyle, healthy diet, stop smoking, watching one's blood pressure and monitoring it, watching one's sugar if one is diabetic, and adhering to a much more fresh food, unprocessed food type of diet. That would be the best way to avoid heart disease.
If you want to lead a healthy life, avoid the following risk factors for cardiovascular disease: social risks, smoking, unhealthy diet, obesity, physical inactivity, medical risks, diabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, other risk factors, family history of heart disease, advancing age. Accessible information about maintaining good cardiovascular health and various risks associated with heart disease can reduce the risk of developing heart diseases such as a heart attack or heart failure in future. Take control of your heart in order to have a happy, healthy heart.
Phones, cloud systems and robots have taken over a lot of what used to be done manually.
Our accounting system is actually based on the cloud.
Google nowadays can tell you where you parked your car.
And Africa's entrepreneurs are using technology to create.
With Pocket Masipala, you can basically do all the services that you would do at the municipality physically by going there, but you can now do them on a mobile app.
Join me, Spumelele Zondi, on Sundays at 9 p.m. on SABC News.
Yes, this is the second hour here on the Newsroom. I'm Elvis Preslin.
And I'm Marumo Kekana from the Sports Desk.
Now, we will be with you until 12 o'clock today. Very interesting discussion we have this morning. We're conducting a poll on the Economic Commission for Africa that says that illicit financial outflows from the African continent could be more than 50 billion rand a year. So the question we pose to you on our poll today, Marumo.
Thus far, we have 166 votes, with 10% saying yes 90% say no. So which means now fellow Africans are saying, look, we're not really aware of the finances coming and leaving the continent as things were.
And it is a lot of money, $50 billion and more. Barry Martin says, as long as African leaders are corrupt, dishonest and untrustful and looking for international investors, billions will leave.
Now it makes you wonder, as Africa is one of the richest continents with all the minerals, but yet the poorest of them all.
All the resources are here, but we do not beneficiate, Marumo. Our people do not get what is theirs. You have a diamond farm on your farm, but you cannot make the diamond shine. It has to come back 10 times, 100 times the price.
The only thing you can do is just to dig it up, and that's where your relationship with that diamond ends.
That's it. Now, today we're also focusing on a task team that was appointed to investigate the cause of violence during service delivery protests in the Northwest. There you see the picture on your screen right there, and the question we pose, why are communities using thuggery to bring their point across? These are some of the comments coming through, Maruma.
The one coming from Dipantu saying that that's how apartheid was fought. Sadly, we are a reactionary state.
This one from Andrew says, it's because government is too slow or doesn't listen to all of us. So going to the street and burning tires is the only solution available.
This one from Collins Ntelele saying that it is the only language this ANC administration seems to take seriously. Engaging in dialogue is a waste of time.
Well, the only language, but maybe there's also a body language being spoken on the streets, he says. Tasetso says, we should not be surprised of such conduct. That's the result of ignorant government that makes empty promises during elections.
This one from Lechasa saying that hashtag land grabs, ruling party ignored us long time ago. They should listen to us now. It's our time.
Well, there you have it. Those are some of your comments. Keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue and participate in the poll. I would like to get your thoughts on it as well. But right now, let's get down to business. Take a look at your headlines. South African Airways has conceded that it's operating on a shoestring budget. This as a strike will continue today at SAA. We'll go there live in a short while. SACP calls on South Africans to join the anti-Zuma marchers in their numbers until the ANC recalls the president. And there's a strong police presence remain as this task team is appointed to investigate the cause of violence during protests in the Northwest. Those are some of your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Rumo Kakana what's happening on the sports front.
It's very interesting, of course. If you are into football, both locally and internationally, you'd know now that things are beginning to heat up as the citizens, Cape Town City, have their Messi moment as they scored a last-minute goal to record a 3-2 win over title rivals Kaizer Chiefs. Antonio Conte's boys are 7 points clear on top of the EPL as they recorded a 4-2 win over Southampton.
Southampton are finished off. Spurs, what have you got?
And in the tennis news, South Africa's top-ranked tennis player Kevin Anderson is through to the third round of the Barcelona Open after beating hometown favorite David Ferrer. I'll be back with this news later on, but first, Elvis is standing by with the news making headlines across the world.
Thank you, Marumo. South African Airways has conceded that it's operating on a shoestring budget. Now, this comes as the South African Cabin Crew Association served the airline with a notice of a strike, demanding a 2,200 Rand meal allowance for international flights. The industrial action could result in widespread disruption of international and domestic flights. The airline says it's doing everything in its power to finalize outstanding matters with the association. For the latest on the SAA strike, we are joined by SABC reporter Mangoba Mkunu, who's at the OR Tambo International Airport. Mangoba, very good morning to you. Can you tell us what is the latest there this morning in relation to the SAA strike that started today?
Well, certainly, Elvis, as you can see behind me, those cabin crew members have heeded that call to join the industrial action. They've come out in their numbers this morning here outside the SAA headquarters at the OR Tambo International Airport, and they're saying that they're not going to go back to work until their demand is met. And obviously we know that what they are demanding at this stage is that they are demanding an increase in their meal allowance for international flights. They're saying that what they're getting at this stage is simply not enough to cover their expenses when they travel abroad. And we do understand that at the moment they are currently getting a meal allowance of about $131, which is an equivalent of about 1,700 rands in South African terms. And then what they are saying is that they are demanding an increase of about $40, and they want that figure to go up to about $170, which will roughly translate to about 2,200 rands in South African terms. And so what they're saying this morning is that they've been waiting for 6 years. They're saying that they have actually been asking for an increase, but they're willing to wait, and they've been patient in waiting for this increase. They're saying that it's simply not enough to sustain them when they travel abroad. But just to tell me more on what the other demands are with regards to their impasse, we are now joined by the Saki president, Zazi Nsibanyoni Mukambi. Yes. Zazi, thank you for joining me this morning. First of all, just to clarify, how many of your members are on strike, and what sort of impact are you expecting from the strike?
Well, as you can see behind me, a large amount of our members are on strike, because currently we represent around 1,350 cabin crew out of a total of 1,700. So there is a significant number out today.
Let's talk about the impact. I mean, if you have, as you say, about 80% of the workforce not at work, what sort of impact are you expecting this to have on the flights?
Well, look, in order for flights to take off, you need licensed cabin crew members. And currently the licensed cabin crew members are right here behind us. And I mean, at the end of the day, we are just waiting for management to call us and put an offer on the table. And we might then consider going back and doing our job.
What is the current status of the talks? Are there any talks that are continuing to try and solve this issue?
Well, currently there are no negotiations. We met last night, and since then we have been served with a notice to interdict. So we do have our legal team at Labour Court. So currently no negotiations are taking place.
Well, SAA has come out to deny that they've actually gone to court at this stage. Their spokesperson saying that he cannot confirm this at the moment. I mean, what do you know about this?
Well, I can confirm that we have been served with the intention to interdict. Our legal team is currently at Labour Court with SAA.
Okay. And with regards to this strike, is it a legal strike according to what you know?
Absolutely. I think we have covered every single legal basis, and we're surprised that they have actually are trying to interdict the strike, because according to the Act, we have met all the requirements.
And with regards to just somebody can say that $131 is quite a reasonable amount for you to be getting at this stage. I mean, do you think that your increase is justified?
Well, look, somebody can say that if they're looking at converting it to rands and thinking about it in the South African context. However, we don't spend these dollars in South Africa. We spend them in places like London, where you have to then exchange into pounds, and you obviously have to deal with exchange rate fluctuations. And also, I mean, a Coke is not the same price as it is in London. So it's a very different environment, and 131 is just not cutting it for the cabin crew currently.
Okay, let's go over that. Maybe just to paint a picture to the viewer as to the kind of cost expenses that you encounter overseas. What is a meal likely to cost? And just to give us sort of a clear picture as to how much the food items cost there, and how much comparing to what you're getting at the moment, if that is enough or not.
Well, I mean, you're obviously aware that we fly to many, many destinations. So I'll compare one that's like in London, for instance. I mean, you'll find a decent meal in London will cost about 40 pounds. And if you convert into US dollars, you can do the math. And bear in mind that then we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And currently, for the last 6 years, it stayed the same. Prices have gone up, inflation has gone up, exchange rates have fluctuated. So it's time that SAA puts something on the table, that and our demand is 170. But let me make it very clear that we are prepared to negotiate with the company once they're prepared to negotiate with us. And I just want to also point out that we have colleagues, such as the flight deck crew, who are earning slightly higher than us. And, you know, there has to, at some point, be some sort of parity. And we have heard the spokesperson of SAA allude to the fact that they have offered us a similar offer, like with the pilots, and we can say that is not true. It's completely different because it was not the same. It had a lot of differences and permutations. And currently, SAA is offering us nothing.
With regards to the strike that you're seeing now, what's going to happen to the strike? How long is it likely to go on? Are you prepared to stay on the street still?
No, absolutely. I mean, we are out here because we took a decisive decision, and we will stay until SAA comes to the table and puts something on the table that is reasonable, that the cabin crew can consider.
Thank you very much. That was Zazi Nsibanyoni Mukambi, who is the SACA chairperson, speaking to us. They're saying that they are prepared to go on with their strike until SAA has met their demand. Well, we do understand that flights have been affected this morning. We have heard that about 4 flights, which are locally operating flights, have been cancelled this morning. And those are mainly between the Johannesburg and Cape Town route. And we also understand that there were 2 planes that were delayed this morning between Johannesburg and PE, as well as Johannesburg and East London. So certainly this strike is certainly having an impact on some of the flights. But obviously SAA has come out to say that they are working on contingency plan. They're saying that not all the cabin crew members are on strike, and they're saying that those that are there are continuing with the work. But the impact that this is likely to have, obviously, we'll have to wait and see at this stage as to whether or not they'll be able to fly all of their planes as scheduled. We do know that they have about 150 local and international flights almost on a daily basis. So certainly we'll be keeping close watch on those developments. We're hoping to speak to SAA at a later stage, but they've certainly come out to say that they are in a process of making sure that they roll out contingency plans to ensure that those passengers that have arrived do get to their destinations. It's back to you, Elvis, in studio for now.
Thank you so much for that report. That was SABC reporter Manqoba Mqunu at the OR Tambo International Airport. Now, let's hope that my partner in crime, Eben Janssen, who's supposed to fly out abroad, will not be affected by this. Good luck there. Now, the South African Communist Party has called on South Africans to join the anti-Zuma marches in their numbers until the African National Congress recalls the President Jacob Zuma. SACP's Second Deputy Secretary, Solly Mapaila, made the call while delivering a Chris Hani Memorial Lecture in East London.
The SACP says it will lead marches calling for the removal of President Jacob Zuma from office. Mapaila says if the ANC does not catch a wake-up call and recall President Jacob Zuma, the party will lose much more in 2019 than the 3 metros it lost during the local government elections. But Mapaila says they won't vote with the opposition in parliament in the vote of no confidence motion against President Zuma. He says they will continue to put pressure on the ANC in its caucuses to have the president recalled.
We support the content of those marches about the removal of the president to step down, but we don't support any call. We don't participate in an anti-ANC program. We are part of the ANC ourselves, but we don't want this president to continue in this form where he's giving away national independence as a South Africa. And for that reason, and for the reason of many of the martyrs of our revolution, we feel that call to defend our national sovereignty from the Guptas and other parasites that have embedded themselves in the state and state-owned enterprises.
Mapaila says the SACP has exhausted all internal structures to get the ANC to act.
Instead of comrades saying, are they raising real issues that should be debated inside the movement? They are being attacked. The party cannot be part of those who attack our comrades who raise critical issues facing our revolution.
The SACP is also in favor of a commission of inquiry to be set up to probe the state capture claims. Busisiwe Jemsana, SABC News, East London.
The ANC Youth League in the Northern Cape has described the former Transport Ministers, Depoor Peters, and former Energy Minister Tina Jumat-Pedersen, as dedicated cadres who did sterling jobs at national government. The two were welcomed home by the Youth League during a rally held in Kimberley. They were sacked, as you can recall, by the President Jacob Zuma during his recent midnight cabinet reshuffle.
Some of the ANC leaders in the province, including Premier Sylvia Lucas, were in attendance. Thus, amidst the tension that is threatening to divide the party due to the battle for leadership positions. They sang praises of how the former ministers worked hard to ensure the province continued to be given top-notch government services. The party also pleaded with them not to abandon the province, but to continue serving the party at home, a call they humbly accepted.
I'm happy that I'm back home, and I will be working with the structures in the province, the structures of the ANC, the structures of the Women's League, as well as the Youth League. And I'm also looking forward to work with the structures of the ANC Veterans League, because it is a structure that really needs to be supported to be able to provide the necessary support and guidance to the broader structures of the ANC. But I'm also here to do my bit as a social worker by profession.
A call was also made to the Extended Working Committee to establish a platform for both Peters and Jumat Peterson to continue interacting at national level to ensure that they serve the province effectively. Pule Mudupe, SABC News, Kimberley.
Amid concerns of low business confidence, President Jacob Zuma has assured investors that South Africa is committed to easing the cost of doing business in the country. President Zuma was speaking at the launch of the Maluti Apofong Special Economic Zone in Harrismith in the Free State. He says that the economic zone will break the cycle of industrial hubs being concentrated in areas like Gauteng and eThekwini.
We are committed to making it easy to do business in South Africa through the applicable 15% corporate tax rate. Government will reduce your tax burdens through the customs control area facility. The South African receiver of revenues will make it easier and a little cheaper for you to trade.
This area has already attracted 1 billion rand, with a target of a further 1.6 billion rand over the next few years. While the emphasis has been on attracting big business and multinationals, the gates are also opened to local industrialists.
The job creation within the area, as well as skills transfer, as well as also the international businesses partnering with the local businesses, is very crucial to this special economic zone.
However, this economic zone is in a municipality that has been found to be in the red, not only by the Auditor General but also Eskom, which threatened to cut it off the grid. The mayor is confident the municipality has turned the corner and is now focused on ensuring uninterrupted water supply.
Well, as a municipality, we have received 98 million to help us as a medium-term solution, and our time frame, it should happen before the end of the 12 months to ensure that we revive our old age infrastructure.
This would be crucial, especially in light of the size of this project. Aldrin Simpier, SABC News, Harrismith.
That's some good news there. Meanwhile, the Economic Freedom Fighters spokesperson, Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, says the Speaker of National Assembly does not treat members of Parliament equally. Their Deputy President, Floyd Shivambu, was facing a disciplinary action for allegedly saying that the President will even kill the ANC members if they don't toe the party line. Early on, he spoke to us, and this is what he said.
The Constitution, as well as the Powers and Privileges Act, affords members of Parliament a certain privilege of absolute freedom of speech inside the House. And that is because the discourse or that is expected to take place there, we're supposed to speak fearlessly, we're supposed to interrogate things. I mean, these days, you would find freedom of speech in a taxi rank than you would in Parliament because of such instances where during a debate you point out that part of the trends in post-colonial societies is people who are presidents and whose decisions don't get challenged get used to that, and they continue to become so dictatorial that they are willing to kill to stay in power.
Yeah.
And also that we know for a fact that Mr. Van Rooyen was a Gupta appointee. That has become a fact, because it's not something that we say, it's something that members of Zuma's cabinet, some of which have been fired, obviously, say.
Let's look at the rules, though, of Parliament. So, I mean, there were new rules that were adopted, and one of the rules, which obviously is the rule that they're looking at, that they are saying that Mr. Shivambu has broken, it's that the committee must investigate any alleged misconduct by a member, and that's what they are abiding by. So, you know, I mean, is your argument still valid?
There. I'm saying to you that this is during a debate. What does the Constitution say? You cannot be arrested, you cannot be taken on any legal suit for the things that you say in Parliament. It's both in the Constitution as well as in the Powers and Immunities and Privileges of Members of Parliament Act. You can't be chastised. Otherwise, we would be scared to speak, because we would be taken to disciplinary committees or we would be arrested. So that particular injunction is suspended inside the House. And you can't be taken to DC. Otherwise, if that happens, if people say things that the Speaker or Zuma is uncomfortable with, they'll just be taken to DC. The very reason why, I mean, they are just demonstrating that the Deputy President of the EFF is correct, because that's what he's cautioning about. The same comments are what he's been taken to DC for.
Yeah.
And if they are real, the logic that he's trying to caution all of us about is precisely that.
Yeah, but bringing in. Okay, I understand you've explained the issue of Van Rooyen, you've explained Zwane, but I think maybe what's also at the centre of this is that alleging or saying that President Zuma would kill his colleagues. You know, that, I mean, surely you see the harshness in that.
Of course, that's what we believe.
And you believe that?
You have to come back. That's what happens in Parliament. They've got more time to speak than all of us. They have to come back and counter the argument. Remember that what you are seeing now are just isolations of 2 sentences from a broader speech. He's making a projection that if we do not remove this guy from the lessons of post-colonial societies, both in the continent and in the Caribbean, is that these people become so comfortable that they are willing to do everything in power, everything to stay in power, including killing. So he's making a projection that what would begin to follow is that he would kill his critics, firstly within the ANC, and then come for the rest of us in society. While making that projection, a proper debater comes back and makes a counter-proposal or a counter-argument. You don't take me to DC.
Yeah. You also, and you have, I mean, you've been very vocal about the Speaker of Parliament and always saying that her job is not to be fair, it's to protect the President.
And that's precisely what has happened.
Are you still feeling this way? I mean, would you like to see her removed? Is that something that you are obviously campaigning for and would love to see going forward?
The priority at the moment is we have to remove Zuma from office. You know, Zuma broke the Constitution. When he's in the House, he's held accountable and he abides by the rules of members of Parliament. That's what the rules say. And we referred to Baleka Mbete that he has broken his oath of office. He said he had a loan to build in Nkandla, which he didn't. We said, take him to a disciplinary committee in a form of an impeachment process. And she ignored it. A person supposedly breaks a rule during a debate, doesn't beat up anybody, is not breaking the Constitution, is taken to a DC. What is happening there? That's a speaker being unfair.
Well, there you have it. Now, a task team has been appointed to investigate the cause of violence during service delivery protests in the Northwest. Remember that we're asking you this question as well. A strong police presence is expected to remain in Itsoseng, in Lichtenburg and Kolini, where the residents are demanding basic services such as water and housing from the cash-strapped Ditsobotla local municipality. Now, yesterday, police battled with the residents of Tobologang, the township next to the R503, which links Maikeng to Gauteng. Schools in the affected townships have been closed.
School kids roam the streets. Businesses have been looted and police property damaged. The community of Bladeville, near Lichtenburg, has taken to the streets demanding proper and effective service delivery.
We want a high school in Bladeville. We want a satellite police station, 24-hour clinic. The needs of Bladeville must be seen to.
Businesses are on the receiving end. This shop owner says she has lost more than 250,000 rand in stock since Friday.
We are very, very devastated. We've lost a lot in terms of business, in terms of stock.
The ANC in the province has condemned this violence, saying some criminals have hijacked this protest to serve their own agendas.
What we do not appreciate and like, and we want to condemn it, is the violent manner in which these demonstrations for service delivery are done. Because it can be possible that it's used to rob shopkeepers, it's used to burn private properties.
We condemn whatever criminality that is taking place, because these things, some of them are no longer related to service delivery.
The community has vowed to continue protesting until government meets them. Olebogeng Khosilenswe, SABC News, Lichtenburg.
Now, breaking news, the High Court in the Western Cape has set aside the government's nuclear deal, saying that it's unconstitutional and unlawful. Now, EarthLife Africa brought the application. The organization brought the application to stop government's nuclear power deal because it was not first debated in Parliament. The deal is estimated to cost 1 trillion rand, and that's put a setback to government's proposals there. Now, we were going to have the 17th Annual Africa Utility Week to speak to us about this and tell us about the Africa Utility Week and what will happen there. And of course, if nuclear is part and parcel of this entire story. But we'll take that story a little bit later. Meanwhile, we're asking you that question. And remember the question relates to all the troubles that we've seen in Lichtenburg and Colini and so forth. And we're asking you the question, why do people resort to thuggery when they protest? I would like to get your thoughts on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page, and we'll read those comments in a short while. We're also conducting a poll. Let's see if we can get up the poll in the meantime while we're trying to sort that out. Put up the poll in the meantime to see what the numbers suggest in the meantime. If we can get it up, well, it's not updated as yet, but as soon as we get that up, we'll take a look at that. Well, there you go. It's up now on your screen. Does Africa pay attention to the loss of billions of dollars leaving the African continent? That's the question we pose to you. So far, we have 166 votes in. So far, 166 votes in. There's 90% of you are saying no. Africa does not pay attention to the loss of billions of rands that we're losing out of the continent, and 10% are saying no. So that is what we have currently. We'll read some of those contents of the comments in a short while as it comes through to us. Now, as I said, we were going to do the 17th Annual Utility Week. It's not happening right now. We'll see if we can get that interview back a little bit later to talk to us about utility that we need, electricity in this country, as well as on the African continent and what that entails. Right now, that interview is not here. We will proceed and get it back a little bit later. So Africa Utility Week, as soon as we get them in, we'll talk to them a little bit later. Meanwhile, educational institutions in South Africa and across the globe are lagging behind in equipping learners with the skills they will require to be employable in coming years. Education experts warn that as a matter of priority, local institutions must immediately devise a plan of action to incorporate these essential skills in schools and higher education institutions. Tracy Salter is the Strategic Academic Development Advisor at FTech, Africa's largest private education provider, and she joins us now in studio. Very good morning to you, Tracy.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Good morning.
First and foremost, tell us, how are South African educational institutions lagging behind in equipping learners with the skills that they would need for the fourth industrial revolution that we have?
All right, I probably would say to you that it's not just South Africa that's lagging behind.
Mm-hmm.
It is a global occurrence.
Yes.
Basically what has happened is the World Economic Forum has carried out a substantial research, a global initiative, to find out what it is that we need in our upskilling of our students in time to come for the job market that's going to be 2020, 2025. And in their findings, they've come up with a key or core 10 skills that they've identified our kids need. And in doing that, we've now had to challenge not just South African the curriculum,
Yes.
education systems, but global education systems to say, if these are the skills that we need, how are we addressing it?
Now let's talk about those skills. 10 skills you are talking to me about.
And can I remember them?
Go through them, the ones that is important.
All right. Look, they're very, when I say they're very generic, things like they talk about problem solving, they talk about creativity, they talk about negotiation, they talk about collaboration, people management, social skills. And when you listen to those words, they sound very known. They sound like, well, we kind of do that. But when you really start unpacking what's going on, you actually find that there's a lot of assumption in any education system that it's happening, and there's not enough explicitness around teaching them and actually developing them.
So how do we go about doing that and changing then the curriculum in order to make sure that we can facilitate and make sure that our kids are bolstered in their thought process moving forward?
All right, and that's a big role that I'm playing now with the Advotech schools at this point in time is you've got to start off by defining what it is. So you've got to, as a school, a group of schools, an education department, you've got to decide or define what it is these skills are in your perspective. And then you've got to make a conscious effort to include that within the teaching and learning. And I've been asked this question before about what do we need to do to our curriculum?
Yes.
And my answer is it's not essentially the curriculum that needs to be changed, it's what we're doing within the classroom in the teaching and learning. So if we know what our skill sets are and we know what we've got to do to develop them, we've then got to go into our classrooms and take our subject content and find the opportunities in there to actually develop the skills. So to actually create a lesson or a scenario where thinking skills are developed or where collaboration is required so that these children constantly develop and upskill themselves.
I agree with you when you say it's not just the curriculum, but it's also not the kids only.
That's
it's
right.
also the teachers that need to be
quite correct. Yeah, okay.
upskilled.
Yep, all right. And again, that is a big part of what my role is. And you know, people have asked me, and it's that endless question of how much money has this got to take and what is it going to cost? And I said, ultimately, if you think about it, it's not a cost of anything other than time, and the time has got to be to train our teachers, to inform them what are these skills, to then inform them how we want to go about unpacking them, and then to give them the training behind that of tools and strategies. So that's probably the greater interest and the greater investment that's got to happen.
Will this have an impact not just in private schools but across the board, even in public schools as well?
Yeah, no one's excluded from this. And you know, when I look at it and I'm going, it doesn't matter what subject you're in, it doesn't matter what school you're in, there is always an element of providing students opportunity to think critically, to be creative, to negotiate, to collaborate. So yes, it's not just private schools, it's across the board.
Do we have the facilities and the teachers to do that?
Well, I would say, look, if you're in any form of education, you're a professional, and yes, you have got the capacity to do that, but it ties back to the question you asked previously, which was, where's the training behind that? So again, I say, let's define what these skills are, let's determine how we unpack them, and then let's put the training behind that to activate them.
There's always a sense that there's almost a lack of a bridging course or a dovetailing between schools and universities and the workplace. Will that address that particular issue as well?
Our hope is that. Our hope is that. And it's not, I mean, as I say, I'm part of an international panel at the moment. I'm working with a research company in Australia, in Sydney, called Incept Labs, and they are going through the same process of looking at how do we develop this, and we can start with our 3-year-olds and do the basics, and then as we snowball through, we go to our juniors, our seniors, our college, our tertiary. Absolutely, there is the dovetailing, but you then need to be very explicit about it, and you need to determine very clearly how we develop from a 3-year-old to our tertiary and our graduates.
How critical is critical thinking?
And you know what's really interesting is under the thinking banner, because what we've done in our group is we've defined 5 broad areas, and then underneath those areas we've got subdivisions. And you hear it time and again, critical thinking, you go, and you know what? There's creative thinking, there's ethical thinking, there's logical thinking. There is so much, and all of it can be critical. And the other side of it, which when I'm doing my training and presentations, is actually saying to them that, you know, critical thinking doesn't have to always be this intensive question that's got to be solved. You can have a lot of fun where you're just putting things out there that seem to have nothing to do with one another, but actually when you're thinking out the box, you're having fun with it, you know. So finding similarities between, I mean, an apple and a computer, you know, and you're trying to go, really? And you can pull that together and have a conversation around that.
Tracy, implementation and timeframes, what are we looking at?
All right. Well, our group, we started this, we rolled out our framework document, because it's draft still, in the end of 2015. We've been working on it through 2016, and we're currently busy with it now. It's not a quick fix. It's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's that word embedded. It's that iceberg where you could have the top of the iceberg where you think you've addressed it, you think you've done it, you've assumed the kids have got it and understood it. To embed to that bottom of the iceberg, that depth, it takes a while.
Where can people get more information?
Well, they're welcome to contact me. They can contact me via email at Advotech, which is tsalter@advotech.co.za, which is probably the easiest forum, or to call through to Advotech.
Is there a website, Pat?
They're not for me at the moment, but I can tell you where else they can go is hop onto the World Economic Forum, and if they go and do a search on the World Economic Forum and find the worldeconomicforum.org, and they have a look there, there is the articles that are related over there, and they can also have a look at that and see what that sparks and develops for them.
Tracy, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you. Great to be here.
That was Tracy Salter from Avtech. Prepare your kids, people. It's the 4th industrial revolution. You need to know what skills they need. 10 skills the World Economic Forum has identified. Go and look for them. We'll take a break. We'll be right back after that.
We do not just speak. We let every voice in our nation find full expression in language and in culture. We do not just teach. We empower all people with education. We do not just bring you the news. We place you where the news is happening. We do not just entertain. We take you on journeys. We do not just broadcast sport. We create an arena for sporting heroes to inspire you. Ours is not just a job, it's a calling. To ensure that everyone in our nation is informed, educated, and entertained. We're able to do this because you do your part. SABC TV licenses. It's all made possible by you.
Now, breaking news. The High Court in the Western Cape has set aside the government's nuclear deal, saying that it's unconstitutional and unlawful. Now, EarthLife Africa brought that application, and the organization brought the application to stop government's nuclear power deal because it was not first debated in Parliament. The deal is estimated to cost 1 trillion rand. Now, let's go to a story that's linked to that. The 17th Annual African Utility Week is the only global meeting place, conference and trade exhibition for African power and water utility professionals. African Utility Week offers a unique networking opportunities for engineers, stakeholders and solution providers on the African continent. For more on this, we're joined by Debay Scott. He's the Director of Deal Advisory Infrastructure at KPMG. Sir, very good morning to you and welcome.
Good morning. Thank you.
First and foremostly, I would like you to talk to us about the 17th Annual African Utility Week and its importance.
Yeah, I think the importance of this, it's probably the only of its kind where the utilities throughout the continent get together and they really challenge each other on the, not just talk about, status quo, but really trying to deal with issues and come up with solutions. So it's really power and water focused. There's a very wide spread of Africa utilities that do invest time to go down there. during a 3.5-day, forum to debate issues. So I think it's grown, it's very well attended, and the topics are well debated.
Now, the current status or state of utilities in the African continent, on the African continent rather, what is it? Are we in dire straits, or do we need some assistance?
I think we need to be a bit more positive than that. I think it all starts with infrastructure. Infrastructure has got any numbers close to $90 to $100 billion of infrastructure investment backlogs. Within that included is the utilities. Everything starts with power. There's just, Africa is known to have the lowest electrification rate throughout the world. Having said that, there are many programs that are beginning to take off to try and address that. And water is in a similar condition. So I think the short answer to your question is I think utilities on the continent are challenged. It's just the severity that differs.
What are some of those challenges that are affecting these countries?
I think the biggest challenge is lack of track record. The African countries have not done a lot of infrastructure transactions. Private money investors are not that comfortable to deal with countries where the financial and legal systems have not been properly tested. So these countries need to do some transactions to build that traction. Affordability is always an issue. I think if we're talking about basic services that are being provided to people, to invariably the lowest earning type sort of people, always degrees of subsidy will be required, from very significant to substantial. So it's a money issue. It's an issue of what is affordable, what can we provide, and then the difficulties in trying to convince the investors and the private sector to get involved.
Now, we are the least electrified continent in the world, but does renewable energy provide perhaps a sound solution to our problems that we have? Because we have the sun, ample of that on the African continent. We also have wind on the coast. Why can't we use these?
We are using them. I think the problem with sun is it's not 24 hours, so it does stop at a point. So part of the problem with renewables is the fact that it's not baseload power. Baseload power is more traditional thermal, coal, gas, those kind, including nuclear. Nuclear is a good baseload power, so to say. So in any energy mix, you need to have a mix of sources. Baseload sources and then your peak sources to try and, as usage go up and down, that you can subsidize the baseload. Renewables is a good subsidy to baseload. It's been very successfully implemented in South Africa over the last 6 years. The cost of implementation of equipment, of the panels, has been dramatically reduced, as you always have if there's competition. So the question is, how much should it be involved on the continent? And the answer is definitely it is part of the solution.
Yes. Baseload, you're talking about nuclear. We just had the story there. The High Court in the Western Cape has set aside government's nuclear deal, saying that it was unconstitutional and lawful. What do you make of that? And does that perhaps put a spanner in the wheel here for South Africa to create an energy mix that can resolve all our energy issues?
I think this has been a very hotly debated topic. I think if we just look at the fundamentals of nuclear as part of an energy mix, a long-term energy mix, and I'm talking 50, 70 years now. There's nothing wrong with that. It's many countries in the world that's got that. It's proven. Coburg in the Western Cape is well lauded as one of the success stories. So,
but it's normally out for 3 months in a year, they say.
Well, it's got specific reasons for that. But so nuclear per se is expensive. It takes very long to get operational, but it lasts very long. Yes. So, it's part of the balance. And I think the public need to understand that as well. It's not just all negative. I think what is interesting is to see what do we do? How do we implement this process? Yes. That there's full transparency, that there's full disclosure, that there's a proper feasibility study by proper group of experts that is available thereafter publicly. Then if the answer is positive, that we must do nuclear, let's do it.
Now the trends that KPMG has picked up from the nuclear infrastructure perspective for South Africa, what is it?
Well, it's a lot of what I've just said. I think the important trend is that I think we need to give it a chance, and we need to let's see where this initiative is going to. This is a very interesting court ruling that we had some minutes ago, to see what is the impact of that. I believe it's really all about transparency. We have to get that. Our country right now is in a being with our low recessionary environment and our recent re-ratings. The immediate need for extra electricity and extra power is not that great, and we've got Mudupi Kusuli that's coming, increasingly on board. We've got all the renewable investments. So the immediate requirement for nuclear is probably not high. But in the long run, I think it's a whole different story.
The 17th Annual African Utility Week, what do you expect from that? Well, the same as last year, hopefully a bit better. I think if we can, I'm sure nuclear will be debated quite hotly, which is right. Let's test the facts. Let's hope there is more disclosure on what the program is going to be. And let's understand that. It will be interesting to see what is going to happen on the gas front, because the gas IPP program is about to be launched. It's interesting, equally interesting to see what the water utilities are going to tell us. Water in South Africa has got its challenges, as we all know. There's some varying degrees from water crisis to massive surplus up here north versus south. So I think it's interesting because these are basic services that human and cities and societies need to survive, power and water. And it will be interesting to debate some of the challenges. Fracking, will that be one of the discussions just briefly?
I think so. I think it's a little bit down the road still, but it will definitely be on the agenda.
So I thank you so much for your time and joining us here.
My pleasure.
That was Debase Scott, Director of Deal Advisory Infrastructure at KPMG, telling us about the 17th Annual African Utility Week. Got to be there if you're interested in power. Well, on another Power Utility Week, or our Power Utility Day, let's find out from Marumu Kakana what's powering the sports news.
Thanks a lot, Elvis. Let's power it off with some PSL action. There was plenty of action last night in the Absa Premier Soccer League. Cape Town City beating Kaizer Chiefs by 3-2 at the Cape Town Stadium. Bafana Bastille, Mamelodi Sundowns got the better of the Avian Warriors, Ajax of Cape Town, at the Loftus Versfeld Stadium in Pretoria, winning by 2-0. And in other fixtures, the Clever Boys beat West Wits, lost by 1-0 to Matsatanza Pitori Supersport United at the Bidvest Stadium. Here are some of the highlights from those three games.
To the net! The citizens. Wow, Bongo letu Jaiya. Yo. Kuchabula nishakamso. Tuzopala about Tuzas Kopasa Supersport United.
Now moving further afield, the Blues, Chelsea, extended their Barclays Premier League lead and converted their nerves at the Stamford Bridge with a 4-2 win over Southampton that moved them 7 points clear of the second place, the Tottenham Hotspur.
Costa face to face with Mar Yoshida.
Sets it back for Hazard! 1-0 the Blues. It's taken them less than 5 minutes. Whipped in by Ward-Prowse. It's come to Gabbiadini. It's in! Romeo on the line. Kanté plays it back in. Alonso wins a header. Cahill! Fabregas. Spooned in towards Diego Costa. Costa, Hazard, Pedro, Costa! It's lovely! It's lovely, lovely, lovely! That's a decent header, and that's a goal back for Southampton.
Moving to other news, South African cricketer JP Dumini has performed admirably for the national team for close to 10 years now. But the elegant left-handed batsman is doing even more of the field of play. Dumini is changing the lives of kids in Mitchell's Plain and Strandfontein areas in the Western Cape. This past weekend, his JP21 project held in Mini Cricket Festival and a 6-side tournament at the Newlands Cricket Ground.
They came in their droves, boys, girls, parents, teachers and coaches. The JP21 project has transformed cricket in the Mitchell's Plain and Strandfontein areas, which has a population of about 1 million people. Dumini founded the project in 2015. Only 4 schools were playing cricket in the area then. Now he has 35 schools playing the game. On average, 1,500 kids play in a weekly league.
It was basically to revive the game of cricket within Mitchell's Plain and Strandfontein. You've got 54 primary schools alone in Mitchell's Plain and Strandfontein, and before we came on board, we had 4 schools playing cricket. Now, if you think of a community of 1 million people and only 4 schools playing the game, there's definitely a concern and a problem if that. So, our vision was to try and get all the kids active, all the kids playing the game of cricket. And thus far, we've got 35 schools out of the 54 playing now within a 2-year period. So there's some great success stories. I think there was 10 provincial kids that have come out of the project so far. We've got bursaries.
The Mitchell's Plain and Strandfontein areas are plagued by crime, gangsterism, drugs and alcohol abuse. The aim of the JP21 project is to change lives, bring hope, inspire dreams and to draw people closer together through the game of cricket.
Cricket is like something that I like. It's a sport that I like, and JP is the best cricket player I know. I like cricket, and my best player's name is JP Dumini. I like JP Dumini, and cricket is my favorite, and I like bowling.
The project model is a school-based cricket league for primary school learners and teachers. The Mini Cricket Festival and 6-a-side tournament at Newlands was the completion of the first half of the JP21 project for 2017. Craig Murray, SABC News, Cape Town.
Moving to other news, South Africa's top-ranked tennis player, Kevin Anderson, is through to the 3rd round of the Barcelona Open in Spain after beating hometown favourite David Ferrer. Unseeded Anderson won 6-3 and 6-4 to record his first ever victory on a clay court against the tournament's 13th seed.
Anderson has beaten the Spaniard before, but only on hard courts. In the first set, he matched Ferrer's power from the baseline, which helped him to break serve. And the South African's first serve was, as usual, one of his most dangerous weapons. He only lost 1 point on it in the whole set. Anderson was further assisted by a lot of unforced errors by the Spaniard, who made 11, while the South African kept his down to just 5. The second set was decided along the same lines as the first, and Anderson once again gave as good as he got from the baseline.
Thought he got that, Kevin Anderson. Oh, he did get it.
And while the Spaniard managed to reduce his mistakes, Anderson continued to dominate with his first serve, and he fittingly finished the match with an ace.
It's over. Anderson takes the win.
And in other matches, Japan's Yuichi Sugita caused an upset, beating the number 9 seed Richard Gasquet 4-6, 6-3 and 7-6. Sugita, who qualified for the main draw as a lucky loser, knocked out previous champion Tommy Robredo in the opening round. Harry Olivier, SABC News.
Let's update your rugby news. The Junior Springboks beat the Varsity Cup Dream Team by 50 points to 19 at the Danny Craven Stadium in Stellenbosch last night. The match was their last game before the start of the Under-20 World Cup tournament in Georgia next month.
Good solid work there and a real attacking opportunity for them.
The Junior Boks drew first blood. Log Ruben van Heerden went over in the second minute for the first of his 2 tries. This seemed to kick the Dream Team into gear, and they replied with a vengeance. They scored 3 tries within 15 minutes to take a 19-7 lead over the Junior Boks, who struggled with their lineouts and defence. The Junior Boks, however, struck back. 2 tries before half-time, including another by van Heerden, gave them a narrow 21-19 lead at half-time.
For a lock forward to score 2 tries in a match is quite special.
After the break, the Junior Boks lifted the level of their game and were relentless in attack. They ran in 4 more tries as their confidence started to grow and their general play improved. They finally recorded a 15-19 victory against an impressive Dream Team outfit.
And that's try number 7 for the SA Under-20s.
I think it was a good game. Started off a bit slow, but second half the boys were, I think the Varsity Cup team was a bit tired though, and our guys just keep on coming because we really wanted this game.
The Junior Boks will depart for the Junior World Cup next month. They will face hosts Georgia, Argentina and France in their Pool C clashes, with the final scheduled for the 18th of June. Liesel Zankel, SABC News.
And that's how we come to the end of your first installment of Newsroom Sport. Stay with us. The program continues at the top of the hour.
It is 6 p.m. Central African Time, broadcasting live from Johannesburg. This is Primetime News.
South Africa said farewell to one of the Rivonia trialists, Uncle Cappy, a fearless stalwart.
With this man who was so engaged, so busy, so witty, so funny, so wise, and so incredibly principled.
Joseph Shabalala has been honored for his contribution to the South African music industry. A statue in his honor was unveiled during an annual gala dinner in Ladysmith.
The shot of the day, however, belonged to American Daniel Berger, who chipped in for an eagle on the par 4 fifth hole.
For all your news updates, stay on Primetime News every Saturday and Sunday from 6 p.m.
April 27th, 1994 was by far one of the most significant days celebrated in our country. This day marked the end of apartheid and brought democratic change and dignity to many South Africans. 23 years later, we take time to celebrate our democracy and reflect on our achievements as a nation. Join us on the 27th on the SABC News channel, SABC2, as well as on your favorite SABC radio station. This broadcast is brought to you by SABC News.
When cell phones get cut off, people say Mdluli was listening. Who are you?
We have to approach Dennis Breitenbach, who was the prosecutor by then.
The DA parliamentarian.
That's correct. The one who was making halabaloo about me.
There are allegations here that you abused the slush fund. What do you say to that?
We don't have slush fund. I don't know about slush fund.
I respect the fact that you cannot talk a lot about the Secret Service and all that. I guess that's the norm internationally.
Yeah.
But how do we know that you, Richard Mdluli, are not abusing the funds of the state? You are counted amongst the president's men. Are you?
That is rubbish.
Also the matter of General Boysen in KZN. He's not speaking very well of you.
No, that one is talking rubbish.
You are perceived to be very powerful, General, and you know, people who don't agree with you seem to pay the price. What is happening with the Oparamribe case?
No, I'm surprised because, as I've said, I'm a person of people.
It's the final hour here on Newsroom. It's 1100 hours Central African time. I'm Elvis Preslin.
And from the sports desk, I'm Marumo Kekan.
We'll be with you until 12 o'clock now. Today, we're conducting a poll on the Economic Commission for Africa that says illicit financial flows from the African continent could be more than 50 billion rand a year. That's why we're asking this question, Marumo.
Yeah, does Africa pay attention to the loss of billions of dollars leaving the African continent? 179 votes came in, 91% saying no, and only 9% of you guys saying yes. I guess that speaks volumes.
Not very confident about the government following up on lost money out of this country and out of the continent as a whole. This one from Pinu says, South Africa's crime will never stop as long as we have corrupt leaders. If they set an example, the rest will follow.
That's the new Shanga there. And of course, the one coming from Al Print saying that no, corruption and the state of African governance makes Africans careless. Power circles only feed themselves and their families.
Unati says no, because some of the politicians in Africa are part of this loss of billions of dollars. Well, Unati, you hit that nail on the head. In some of these African continents, or countries rather, you've seen those financial outflows out of their countries, and you can see what is happening here. So how do we stop it? We'd like to get your thoughts on the Twitter handle as well as on the Facebook page. But we're also conducting, we're also asking your question as we, there's a task team that was appointed to investigate the cause of the violence in Northwest. Lovely protest there. So the question that we pose to you today is, why do communities use thuggery to bring their point across? That's the question. Let's take a look at what people have to say.
Taking this one from Mojale from Panya, saying that I personally condemn damages caused during protest. Our government must speed up demands of community to avoid these actions.
This one from Kotleho says, it's a culture. Many things are achieved by thuggery in this government, but I condemn destruction of our own property and looting. Now that is correct, Kotleho, because we're going to use it tomorrow.
And this one from Theo, saying that when people feel that prosperity is meant for the elite, then why not ban and destroy? Radical economic reformation needed.
Well, radical economic reformation and not transformation, according to that one. Peter says, only if the government can develop a new trend to listen to people, we will see less violence in society. Those are some of your comments. Keep them coming. We'll read them as we continue. But right now, let's get down to business and take a look at your news headlines. South African Airways has conceded that it's operating on a shoestring budget. The SACP calls on South Africans to join the anti-Zuma marches in their numbers until the ANC recalls the president. And there's strong police presence that remain as a task team is appointed to investigate the cause of violence during protests in the Northwest. Those are your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Marumo Kekana what's happening on the sports front.
It's very interesting. I mean, the fans of the glamour boys of Pefeni, Kaiser Chiefs, are still licking their wounds, and we're not making it any easier for them for showing the visuals.
Well, it was a close call, but we have to give the first comers a first chance to win.
3 points is gone. Of course, what you can look forward to is the citizens Cape Town City have their messy moment as they scored a last-minute goal to record a 3-2 win over rivals Kaiser Chiefs. And moving to English Premier League, Antonio Conte's boys are 7 points clear on top of the EPL as they recorded a 4-2 win over Southampton. And to the world of tennis, South Africa's top-ranked tennis player Kevin Anderson is through to the third round of the Barcelona Open after beating hometown favorite David Ferrer. I'll be back with this and other news-making headlines in the world of sports. But first, Elvis is sitting at the main desk with news-making headlines.
Thank you, Marumo. Starting off with breaking news we had a little bit earlier for you. The High Court in the Western Cape has set aside the government's nuclear deal, saying that it's unconstitutional and unlawful. Earthlife Africa brought the application to stop government's nuclear power deal because it was not first debated in Parliament. The deal is estimated to cost R1 trillion. South African Airways, SAA, has conceded that it's operating on a shoestring budget. Now this comes as the South African Cabin Crew Association served the airline with a notice of a strike demanding a R2,200 meal allowance for international flights. The industrial action could result in widespread disruption of international and domestic flights. The airline says it's doing everything in its power to finalize outstanding matters with the association. The South African Communist Party has called on South Africans to join the anti-Zuma marches in their numbers until the ANC recalls the President Jacob Zuma. SACP's second Deputy Secretary, Solly Mapaila, made the call while delivering a Chris Hani Memorial Lecture in East London.
The SACP says it will lead marches calling for the removal of President Jacob Zuma from office. Mapaila says if the ANC does not catch a wake-up call and recall President Jacob Zuma, the party will lose much more in 2019 than the 3 metros it lost during the local government elections. But Mapaila says they won't vote with the opposition in Parliament in the vote of no confidence motion against President Zuma. He says they will continue to put pressure on the ANC in its caucuses to have the president recalled.
We support the content of those marches about the removal of the president to step down, but we don't support any call. We don't participate in an anti-ANC program. We are part of the ANC ourselves, but we don't want this president to continue in this form where he's giving away national independence as a South Africa. And for that reason, and for the reason of many of the martyrs of our revolution, we feel that call to defend our national sovereignty from the Guptas and other parasites that have embedded themselves in the state and state-owned enterprises.
Mapaila says the SACP has exhausted all internal structures to get the ANC to act.
Instead of comrades saying, are they raising real issues that should be debated inside the movement? They are being attacked. The party cannot be part of those who attack our comrades who raise critical issues facing our revolution.
The SACP is also in favor of a commission of inquiry to be set up to probe the state capture claims. Busisiwe Jemsana, SABC News, East London.
Now, government officials are continuing to visit the devastated families who lost their children during a fatal accident in Bronkhorstspruit. Gauteng Provincial Legislature Portfolio Committee on Education visited the area to extend their heartfelt condolences to the families of the learners and the relatives and friends. The Portfolio Committee was led by the chairperson, Joe Mpisi, who is with us now in studio to further discuss this. A very good morning to you, sir, and welcome.
Good morning, Elvis, and the viewers at home.
What prompted the visit, and what did you find when you got there to the families of the children that died in the accident?
Yeah. First, thanks for the opportunity. We went as the Portfolio Committee to visit the families of these children, as well as the family of the driver, to express our condolences and express our views about how we feel about the situation. This is a tragic, it's a horrific accident, which I think South Africa should mourn with those families and the learners in those 2 schools. But I must indicate to you that it's a bad experience. I even went to investigate and look at the road itself. The road has potholes, the road is narrow. You could imagine the truck in a high speed, as well as this Kumbi trying to overtake what would have been. Obviously, those kids were not going to survive because we're told the truck had to drag that Kumbi for quite some time. That's why it had to caught fire. So we're a bit worried about the state of the situation. But we did not also want to disrupt yesterday. We went again yesterday. We did not want to disrupt the process of the pathology, which is underway at the moment. But we are told that everything is going according to plan now.
Now, I know that the investigation is still underway, but is there a sense as to exactly what happened?
I think the driver was reckless. We must say this, that the driver was reckless. He did not consider the distance between him and the car that he was overtaking and the truck that was approaching. obviously, even the track itself was on a high speed, we are told. But I think it's a human error, which the judgment was not a good judgment by the driver.
And of course, you talk about the road as
Yes.
well, that is in a terrible condition
Yeah.
as we speak. Now, the families, how are they coping right now? And is there any support that you are providing to them?
Yes, the Department of Education, it is indeed giving that moral support. Counseling is underway. We know that those children who are also sharing classes with those learners are also been given that particular assistant of counseling through the department. And we know that the department is also taking care of the proceedings and the planning for the mass funeral that is going to happen hopefully next week. We're just awaiting the outcome of the pathologic process.
What did you say to the families? Because it must have been a very tough time.
It is tough. We spoke to some few of them. Others could not contain themselves. And you could see, I'm a parent myself, and you can imagine if you lose 2 of your kids or 3 of your kids in an accident, what goes through the father or the mother's mind? It's devastating. However, we want to make sure that the government supports this family. As the portfolio committee, it's our responsibility because we do oversight over the department. So it's important that the department respond according to the needs of these particular families. We know one family requested that one body should be buried in KwaZulu-Natal, and I think that family also must be given the necessary support regardless of the distance where this family is going.
Talk to us about funeral arrangements. We heard first people were thinking about a mass funeral and individual funerals and so forth.
The proposal is about the mass funeral because I think from our side it will be a better approach to do because these learners were together in the bus, so it will be correct that we have a mass funeral to accommodate everybody rather than to have a funeral there. It will not help us to heal because we are equally affected as the public representatives, seeing our learners going through this particular difficulty at this moment. However, we must also indicate that we want to call on the Department of Transport to look into that road. The road is in Mpumalanga. If it was in Gauteng, we're going to influence otherwise. But when we had the MEC from Mpumalanga said the road will be constructed again next year, that's very far.
Yes.
2018 November, it's too far. We hope that they are listening and they must just at least have a contingency plan to actually expand that road and reconstruct that road.
Now, what about Scholar Patrol? Is there a sense that schools should maybe adhere to certain policies in order to make sure that students, when they are, or learners, when they are being ferried, that they are taken care of?
I think that's a good idea to suggest. That's one thing that we must look at, that the buses that are transporting learners should be escorted. But equally, we must also have a process of reviewing how these drivers are being appointed, because some of these drivers, we're not saying all, but some of them that we have seen in the past, some of them were not even in a good state of driving a vehicle. You'll understand what I mean about that. Because you need a process where a driver must take that as an occupation. When you transport these learners, you're carrying the lives of people. You're not just carrying ordinary things behind the back of the bus. So we want the department to introduce a process. First, review whether the driver is capable of driving. There must be a test of all these drivers. Equally, they must be checked whether these drivers are not always on alcohol. Traffic department must do also a random check on them, so that we can then minimize these accidents.
So basically your message to parents out there that where their children would normally use these type of transport to go to school or on vacation or wherever they go?
Look, the department and ourselves, and I know that we engaged with the association of the buses in Gauteng. Remember, these learners come from Mpumalanga.
Yes.
And they were attending school in Gauteng. And obviously, we don't provide that transport to Mpumalanga. The parent would have made that arrangement from Mpumalanga or together with the government of Mpumalanga.
Yes.
But we must also indicate that parents must not take their kids to be transported by cars that are not roadworthy, to be transported by people that they don't know, to be transported by people that are not actually having a good state of being good drivers on the road.
Mpisi, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
I appreciate it.
That was Joe Mpisi, he's the chairperson of the Gauteng Provincial Legislature Portfolio Committee on Education, joining us in studio. They shared heartfelt moments with the families of the children that perished in that accident. Let's now move on. This morning's SABC's TNA breakfast show in Sandton was discussing what is radical economic transformation. Economist Chris Hart, remember him? He says that radical economic transformation is about a policy of economic transfer, and it becomes anti-growth, which then becomes a policy of exclusion for the vast majority of people who are unemployed.
With radical economic transformation, I often hear laundry list that is going to achieve all of these things, and some of them are actually the exclusion. If you do the one, it actually excludes the other. Radical economic transformation is about a policy of economic transfer, all right, and as such it becomes anti-growth. It then becomes a policy of exclusion for the vast majority of people who are unemployed. And the reason I say that is to actually change the economy. The biggest source of inequality and poverty is, in fact, unemployment. You sort unemployment out, and things like inequality is reduced. Housing problems are reduced, education problems are reduced, crime problems are reduced. There's all sorts of other social issues that are diminished, may not be solved, but certainly diminished if you solve unemployment as an issue. And the only way you can solve unemployment as an issue is to vastly expand the size of the economy. This economy is too small for the number of people in it. We employ 16 million people, and 12 million jobs are needed. The job surveys say about 8 million, but when you normalize economic participation rate and look at the age profile of the demographics, we need about 12 million jobs being created. There are only 2 million whites participating in the economy. So this is a black problem. And the only way to actually include those 12 million people in the economy is to actually build an economy that can absorb those 12 million people. And that needs capital, because you cannot bring new economic activity into existence without capital. And capital is savings. And so we need to actually boost savings and encourage foreign capital, because we don't have enough capital in the country to actually solve that problem. So I actually believe if we're actually looking at a policy of just economic transfer, it actually is an elitist policy, all right, aimed at the connected rather than the actual excluded. The truly excluded in the economy will remain excluded, because with it will come stagnation, with it will come further downgrades, and we need to actually resolve that as a problem. There are no magic wands in economics. You have to have capital. The country must be able to attract capital, and we can't go to international investors and start speaking gobbledygook, all right, that's something people can't understand, and expect people to come as investors to the country. We need investment, foreign investment, and we also need local investment. And that confidence needs to be important. We need to appreciate anybody who's prepared to invest and create jobs are part of the solution and should not be defined as part of the problem.
That was Chris Hart, but also on the panel discussing what radical economic transformation is was the founder of Decolonization Foundation, Zwanele Manyi. Now he says radical economic transformation means that black people must be trusted with important positions in companies and be seen as more than just employees.
Trusted, that's a starting point. You will never have radical economic transformation with the kind of thinking that Chris is articulating, where black people are generally seen as just workers and not owners. This is the issue. It must change in the mind. When you see a black person, you must not just see somebody that needs work. You must see an industrialist. This is a starting point. It's in the mind. You see, even the government must lead with this. This is why even with the legal firms and the briefings and what have you, we must see more briefings of black lawyers We must see more briefing of black professional firms. We must see more briefing and business being given to black people. The whole thing starts with the mind. As long as when we see black people, we see failures. When we see black people, we see corrupt people. When we see black people, we see incompetence. Then we're not about to do this thing. What is the situation? The situation is very dire, and this is what must change. We cannot have a situation where black people continue to have 3% of the JSE. We cannot, and I know the arguments for that. Chris is going to raise them, and I'm going to deal with him if he raises the issue. But black people own only 3% of the JSE. That is fact. It cannot be that black people who continue to be 80% of the economic active population, but are only about 10% on the top positions. This means we've got a racist economy. This is what must change. When we say radical economic transformation, it means first and foremost that black people must be trusted with important positions, with running this economy. We cannot have a situation where when we think about the economy of this country, the first thing that comes into mind is white people running these monopolies. And I think even with that issue, and people tend to run away from white monopolies to actually white monopoly capital, not just monopoly capital. The difference is that when you say monopoly and not include white, you end up with a situation where you target Eskom, you target Randwater, you target all the state-owned enterprises which should continue to be monopolies, because those monopolies ensure that we've got a controlled price structure so that the poorest of the poor are not affected. Once you deconcentrate Eskom, Randwater, and all of those state monopolies, it means that the vulnerable are going to be at the mercy of the markets, at the mercy of the people that are profit-driven. Okay. So, in summary, it starts with the mind. Okay. Trust black people, then radical economic transformation has got a chance. But if you continue to say black people are just workers, yes, and all that, and they keep getting excluded, when we talk about local content, we're just thinking about increasing the work of the white-owned firms, and blacks are just there as workers. This is a problem. All right. We want black owners.
That you come up with is you've got to have expansion. The economy must grow, and for that you need capital. If you want to avoid that it's just an arrangement where the top elites just are sorting out the economy between themselves, then you have to start with what I call bottom-up economic growth, and that's what a model that I believe in, that we need to actually get money into communities, that people look for problems in their communities, and problems are for businesses to actually, it's an opportunity to open a business. When you're solving a problem as a business, you are generating a service or product or whatever that solves that problem, and we need to actually do that from bottom up. The economy is over-concentrated, and that's because of a regulatory structure that we've got, where regulators prefer just a few operators, because it's much easier to control an industry as a regulator than if there's hundreds of operators. And yet this is what we need to do. We need to actually generate the growth of small businesses and medium enterprises, etc., so that you're actually bringing more people into the economy. You've got to have proper inclusion, right? If we end up with a stagnant economy and this thing called radical economic transformation, all that will actually mean is we've declared sanctions against our own country, right? Because you've created complexities in terms of dealing with doing business, which you don't have to deal with in Thailand and in Indonesia and Ireland and that type of thing. And we need to appreciate, to attract capital, right? We need to make ourselves an easier destination to do business and invest, because then I use the term water flows downhill. If you're easier to invest and do business, capital will flow to you. If you're more difficult to invest and do business, capital will flow away from you. And with this, what we've done is we've made South Africa about 105th most economically free country, and the stagnation is showing. And as the economy stagnates, and remember that's the point I'm making, in a stagnant economy, radical economic transformation is a zero-sum game. Right? In a growing economy, you start to include, and that's the critical thing. Must be a growing economy with growing ownership in the economy.
We are tired of this thing of being told, grow the economy first, then we'll see you later. We want to be part of that growing of that economy. This is the issue. And you see this thing of when we try to be nice to each other and we say, it's not a black issue, it's not a white issue. It says, no, it is a black and a white issue. Black people are the ones that are poor. Black people are the ones that do not have equity. Black people are the ones that are in the margins. So it is indeed, a focus must be on black people. There must be no two ways about it. This is why we're not making progress, because we are just having tea and biscuits with each other and we are not facing the reality. We must face the reality and then we'll be able to deal with this thing. On the issue of, do we want black monopoly capital? No, we don't want black monopoly capital. What we want is equitable ownership of this economy. It's not sustainable to have the kind of situation that we have, where black people who are a majority in this country, but continue to be in the margins of the ownership of the economy of this country, continue to be in the margins of even on the earning capacity. The latest stats, SA told us that black people own a fifth of what white people are owning. So why can't, this is why it's going to be difficult to talk about black and white, because even on salary level, white people own and more. On ownership, white people own more. So it's a black and white issue. But before I complete, the issue here is, for this to happen, black people, because we are black people and we've been deprived from apartheid, we don't have financial muscle, we need financing. This is why it is a shame and a pity that our government has actually stopped the NEF and are now collapsing it into a general dealer, which is the IDC, instead of funding the NEF to fund black business. So radical transformation means government must change radically from collapsing NEF into IDC, but rather funding NEF on its own so that NEF can focus on funding black business, because we cannot compete without funding. White companies, they easily go to banks. Banks are generally racist. They give money to white firms, but they have a problem giving money to black people. That's a problem that we have.
Well, there you have it. That was the discussion this morning on the TNA Breakfast. What is radical economic transformation? What do you understand from that? We'll have a discussion on the newsroom shortly on that one, so you have to stay tuned. Meanwhile, it has emerged that two people that have been arrested in connection with the killing of a 12-year-old boy in Colini in the northwest are farmers. The Premier, Supremo Mapelo, has commended the police for the swift action of by arresting the suspects by the police. The area resembled a war zone when people went on the rampage in revenge of the killing of the boy, which is suspected to be racially motivated. They blockaded roads, destroyed properties, and vowing not to stop until those responsible for the boy's killing were brought to book. Mapelo has called for calm and stability in the Ditsobotla local municipality and has assured residents that law and order will be maintained in the area. Mapelo yesterday set up a task team to attend to the situation in the municipality.
School kids roam the streets. Businesses have been looted and police property damaged. The community of Bladeville near Lichtenburg has taken to the streets demanding proper and effective service delivery.
We want a high school in Bladeville. We want a satellite police station, 24-hour clinic. The needs of Bladeville must be seen to.
Businesses are on the receiving end. This shop owner says she has lost more than 250,000 rand in stock since Friday.
We are very, very devastated. We've lost a lot in terms of business, in terms of stock.
The ANC in the province has condemned this violence, saying some criminals have hijacked this protest to serve their own agendas.
What we do not appreciate and like, and we want to condemn it, is the violent manner in which these demonstrations for service delivery are done, because it can be possible that it's used to rob shopkeepers, It's used to burn private properties.
We condemn whatever criminality that is taking place because these things, some of them are no longer related to service delivery.
The community has vowed to continue protesting until government meets them. Olebogeng Khosilenswe, SABC News, Lichtenburg.
Now here's an important story if you live in Gauteng and you have children and they need to go to school next year. The Gauteng online learner admission registration for grades 1 and 8 for next year is set to open on Tuesday next week, the 2nd of May. Now, anxious parents, they queued at the Gauteng Education Department's offices in Johannesburg last year, hoping to secure space for their children ahead of the school's reopening. It was chaos. Now, this was after experiencing challenges with the online registration system. Gauteng Education MEC Panyasa Lesufi has urged parents to prepare the necessary supporting documents before next week. And for more on this issue, we join in studio by the spokesperson of the Gauteng Department of Education, Stephen Mabona. Mr. Mabona, very good morning to you and welcome to your new post, it is.
Thank you very much.
First and foremost, tell us about the online registration. When is the opening date? 2nd of May, what time and where?
Yes, thank you very much. The admissions will be opening on the 2nd of May. That is 8:30, and we'll be closing on the 12th of June, midnight. So hence we are now encouraging parents to get their documents ready, but then after applying online they will then be communicated with via SMS on when they must bring the documents, because you'll understand after application the system will confirm that we have successfully applied and you are on a waiting list, and you will then move from there.
What are some of the supporting documents that you are talking about, and where should parents then take them? Do they do it online, or how do they do this?
Look, the supporting documents, the information during the placing, they will communicate with them, but it's your ID, your immunization certificate, your birth certificate, probably your proof of residence, which you will then have to submit to a school that would have been accepted you. But what we want to encourage them is now to apply online on time, so that come the placement period, we don't have a number of people who will be coming probably in January and they won't be assisted. So we just want to assure that we have improved the system. We will not probably experience the challenges that we had last year. The capacity has been improved. We have now 6 servers that we'll be using instead of the 4, which means the capacity it's enough not to crash, and we have it's easy. The process is easy now, because initially we wanted parents to create a profile first and then register. So now when you enter the system, you just give us your details, you give a learner detail, and the third stage you apply, and the system will successfully send you an SMS immediately. So what we are also appealing is we need correct cell phone numbers, because we're going to communicate constantly with you there. We will give you, during the placement, we'll give you 7 days to either accept or decline the offer of placement. If you don't, unfortunately, we'll then have to move on and give the other parent a space.
The offer of placement that you're talking about, that is now when the parent are saying that this is the school that your child will go to.
Definitely. What we're encouraging, because the system will prompt them, either you want to utilize the home address or work address or a sibling. So we'll encourage them to go with those options, not to rush into, actually it will force them to go into those options, because the previous one was giving them the school of choice, which means it can be probably outside the feeder, and you will then have challenges of people applying in so many schools, where you will be sitting with a number of people that you think they are not placed, only to find that they are placed. So now the system will compel them. It's either you use a home address, work address, or a sibling. Then the system will automatically give you an option of the schools that you can choose with that option.
What about those parents that do not have access to computers or internet, or not even computer literate for that matter? How do you deal with those parents?
Look, like as the MEC indicated yesterday, we have listened to the public and we, heed the call, took advices. We are now opening about 65 centers where parents will be in a position to walk in, and our officials will be there assisting them. So if you don't even need to pay anything, you just walk in, you will be assisted, and the application process will be done there. Hence, on the 2nd, the MEC will be, hitting the button for the first time, assisting a parent that would have walked in one of the centers in Orange Farm, just to say this is the process and how it's going to be working. So we have accommodated them.
Yes. 65 locations. Will that be in every district, or how will it work?
Definitely, we're going to announce the list, but then it will be in all the districts. We'll be using libraries, the two-song centers. So we'll be encouraging people to use those that are on the list so that they can be assisted accordingly.
Is that the only sort of online registration education that you are providing, or is there more that you are doing for parents that need to register their children?
No, look, this is what we are using now. But remember, we are targeting only the grade 1 and grade 8 only. The other inwards grades, people must interact with their schools, but schools will definitely interact with them. We are saying this system is quite fair.
And it's a year in advance, by the way.
Yes, it's a year in advance. It's quite fair. You avoid situation whereby you go to a school and when you are at the gate, they just look at you and say, this one will not afford, the school is closed, or the registration is closed, or our school is full up until 2019. So there's no one who's going to be interfering with the application. Unlike before, when you go to a school, give them a form, probably if they don't want to, they throw it in the dustbin, you don't have a recourse. Now, the system, the moment you are done, you receive an SMS, you are sure that you are on the waiting list, and hence we are encouraging to use a home address or a sibling or work address so that you don't find yourself on the list B. Because if you use a school of choice, probably you might be on list B, which chances are very slim, or it limits your chances of being placed. So hence we'll encourage parents to do so.
What will happen to those parents who missed the deadline after the June deadline?
Look, hence we're starting now to spread the message. Last year we were told that the communication was not much. We are going to newspapers, we are going to the media, we're going everywhere, making necessary noise to say, have your foot soldiers. If we come to communities where we need to do door-to-door, that will be doing that. I mean, the system, it's an enabler, because you will know to plan what resources to take to where, so that you plan ahead. If you need more classes, you will know. If you need more teachers, you will know. www.gdeadmissions.gov.za.
Just briefly, 30 seconds. There was also a case of a lady that claimed that the online registration system was hers. What is happening to that case?
Look, the department it's working closely with affected officials and the lady to check on what is really happening. But as we are concerned, this system does not belong to anyone. It belongs to us, and it's our initiative. And as Gauteng, we are looking forward. I mean, digitally we are moving. Looking at our ICT schools, we are saying we cannot allow a situation whereby we educate people who will be focusing on queuing for social grants. We want business or entrepreneurs, orientated mind people who will want to be employers, not to be employed, creators of programs. That's what we are teaching as Gauteng.
Mr. Mabona, I thank you so much for your time and good luck with the registration process.
Thank you.
That was the spokesperson of the Gauteng Department of Education, Stephen Mabona, joining us in studio. You have to go online now, not later, now. That's Tuesday, the 2nd of May. That is the date that you need to go online, register your child. Otherwise, you will snooze and you will lose. But it's over to Marumo Kakana. We'll tell you more about that on the sports field.
Warm greetings from the sports desk. My name is Marumo Keka, and of course, you snooze, you lose. That's the best way to describe the intensity in the chase for the ABSA Premiership title this season. The top 5 clubs on the log were all in action last night, and 2 of those were left licking their wounds. The Clever Boys beat the Vets, suffered by a 1-0 in the hands of SuperSport United, while the Glamour Boys of Perfeni, Kaizer Chiefs, lost by 3-2 to Cape Town City, who are now 3 points clear of the defending champions, Mamelodi Sundowns.
In a pulsating encounter in the mother city, Chiefs were up against City. In the absence of the injured Itumeleng Khune and the brilliant Kuzwayo, Bruce Vuma made his debut between the sticks for the Glamour Boys. Unfortunately, it didn't take long for him to collect the ball from the back of his net as Obringoma opened his team's account.
Ngoma, now go to the
4 minutes later, however, Spiwe Shabalala pulled one from the top drawer to make it 1-1. Lebohang Manyama restored City's lead with a composed finish. In the second half, Amakosi took the game to City. The pressure paid off as Gustavo Paez, who came off the bench, found Joseph Malongwane inside the box. There were chances galore for both sides to wrap up the match, but in vain. And in stoppage time, Judas Musiamedi sent Cape Town Stadium into raptures as he scored the winner for the home side. It was a titanic battle at the Bidvest Stadium in Mill Park. Vets played host to SuperSport United, knowing that a win would see them edging closer to league owners. But things didn't go according to the script as Amatatanza set the cat among the pigeons in the league championship chase with their win, thanks to a Tusopala chip. The Clever Boys dropped to 3rd place, 2 points behind Sundowns and 4 behind City. Meanwhile, Mamelodi Sundowns came into their match against Ajax Cape Town looking to keep alive their hopes of defending their league title. The Urban Warriors didn't give the Pito Musimane-led troops any chances in the first half. But in the second half, Sundowns upped their game, and there was no denying arguably the young player of the season, Percy Tau, who opened the Brazilians' account. Thembazwane made it 2-0, and the Sundowns moved from the 4th position on the log up to the 2nd. 2 points behind the leaders Cape Town City with 2 games in hand. Mduduzi Ndlovu, SABC News.
Now moving to the English Premier League. Chelsea extended their Barclays Premier League lead and calmed nerves at the Stamford Bridge with a 4-2 win over Southampton that moved them 7 points clear of the 2nd place, Tottenham Hotspur. Fixtures, Tottenham are on 7 league games unbeaten run, being second on the Blues. They will need victory to maintain pressure, and Palace are going to be bound after surprising Liverpool on Sunday. Tomorrow is the Manchester Derby, the host City, wanting an atone of being dumped out of the FA Cup by Arsenal. South African cricketer JP Dumini has performed admirably for the national team for close to 10 years now. But the elegant left-handed batsman is doing even more of the field of play. Dumini is changing the lives of kids in the Mitchells Plain and Strandford areas in the Western Cape. This past weekend, his JP21 project held a mini cricket festival and 6-a-side tournament at the Newlands Cricket Ground.
They came in their droves, boys, girls, parents, teachers and coaches. The JP21 project has transformed cricket in the Mitchells Plain and Strandfontein areas which has a population of about 1 million people. Dumini founded the project in 2015. Only 4 schools were playing cricket in the area then. Now he has 35 schools playing the game. On average, 1,500 kids play in a weekly league.
It was basically to revive the game of cricket within Mitchells Plain and Strandfontein. You've got 54 primary schools alone in Mitchells Plain and Strandfontein, and before we came on board, we had 4 schools playing cricket. Now, if you think of a community of 1 million people and only 4 schools playing the game, there's definitely a concern and a problem if that. So, our vision was to try and get all the kids active, all the kids playing the game of cricket. And thus far, we've got 35 schools out of the 54 playing now within a 2-year period. So there's some great success stories. I think there was 10 provincial kids that have come out of the project so far. We've got bursaries.
The Mitchells Plain and Strandfontein areas are plagued by crime, gangsterism, drugs and alcohol abuse. The aim of the JP21 project is to change lives, bring hope, inspire dreams and to draw people closer together through the game of cricket.
Cricket is like something that I like. It's a sport that I like, and JP is the best cricket player I know. I like cricket, and my best player's name is JP Dumini. I like JP Dumini, and cricket is my favorite, and I like bowling.
The project model is a school-based cricket league for primary school learners and teachers. The Mini Cricket Festival and 6-a-side tournament at Newlands was the completion of the first half of the JP21 project for 2017. Craig Murray, SABC News, Cape Town.
South Africa's top-ranked tennis player Kevin Anderson is through to the 3rd round of the Barcelona Open in Spain after beating hometown favourite David Ferrer. Unseeded Anderson won a 6-3, 6-4 to record his first ever victory on a clay court against the tournament's 13th seed.
Anderson has beaten the Spaniard before, but only on hard courts. In the first set, he matched Ferrer's power from the baseline, which helped him to break serve. And the South African's first serve was, as usual, one of his most dangerous weapons. He only lost 1 point on it in the whole set. Anderson was further assisted by a lot of unforced errors by the Spaniard, who made 11, while the South African kept his down to just 5. The second set was decided along the same lines as the first, and Anderson once again gave as good as he got from the baseline.
Thought he got that, Kevin Anderson. Oh, he did get it.
And while the Spaniard managed to reduce his mistakes, Anderson continued to dominate with his first serve, and he fittingly finished the match with an ace.
It's over. Anderson takes the win.
And in other matches, Japan's Yuichi Sugita caused an upset, beating the number 9 seed Richard Gasquet 4-6, 6-3 and 7-6. Sugita, who qualified for the main draw as a lucky loser, knocked out previous champion Tommy Robredo in the opening round. Harry Olivier, SABC News.
And that's a wrap from the sports desk. Up next is your continental weather forecast.
We do not just speak, we let every